Good morning. We are live. I will call the meeting to order. I will ask the clerk to do a roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Danielson.
You're on mute, Liz.
My apologies. Present.
Councillor Barry.
Present.
Councillor Dayu.
Here.
Councillor Shirley.
Present.
Mayor Moffat.
Present. Thank you. And I'm proud today is the first time we will do our land acknowledgement. So having said that, we respectfully acknowledge the Township of Algonquin Highlands, is located on the Treaty 20 Michisagi territory and in the traditional territory of the Michisagi and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations, which are Curve Lake, Rama, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Beausoleil, and the Georgina Island First Nations. We acknowledge a historical shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original Indigenous inhabitants as stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. May I have a mover and a seconder for the approval of the agenda? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that the December 9th, 2021 regular council meeting agenda be approved to circulated.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of disclosures of pecuniary interest today? Oh, sorry, Julie, I thought I saw a hand there. Being none, the only remarks I have is a reminder that our closed session is scheduled to occur at 11:30. So if we are not at that portion of the agenda, we will interrupt our regularly scheduled program and go in that direction. May I have a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the previous minutes? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shirley, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that the November 17th special meeting and the November 18th, 2021 regular meeting minutes be approved as circulated.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We have, sorry, excuse me, something in my throat this morning. We have no public meetings, but we have delegation. We have Catherine Stasiak and Robert Passmore from WSP, so we will bring them in.
Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for having us today. Thank you for the introduction, Mrs. Carol Moffat. My name is Catherine Stasiak-Riddell. I am the project manager for the sewage system inspection programs with WSP Canada, Inc. I'm also joining Robert Passmore today as well. So he is a senior rural servicing engineer, and he has over 20 years experience in rural servicing, as well as his experience in hydrogeology, which complements our skill set quite well. So today we are presenting the 2020-2021 annual report. I think we can all say that the last 2 years have been a bit extraordinary in some ways to all of us. So in 2020, WSP conducted a voluntary reinspection program. So those that participated in the program last year were able to do so voluntarily. And then in 2021, we moved back to our conventional model, which also includes the scheduling of inspection times to increase our overall participation. And as such, we saw that there was a larger participation in 2021. So looking at the program overall, we have inspected a total of 3,173 properties over the course of the last 4 years. There are 966 parcels that remain to be inspected in 2022. And taking a look just quickly, I know we don't have a lot of time today, but just to say that our results for 2020 and 2021 are generally speaking on par with the results that we've been seeing in the previous years. There are some exceptions. So we have an increase in the number of Class 1 systems. We're seeing a larger distribution of Class 1 systems as well as Class 2 systems in this zone, in Zone C, as well as Zone D. So we've seen an increase in the remedial actions associated with Class 1 and Class 2 systems, However, that's really because we are seeing an overall increase in the presence of class 1 and class 2 systems. And this is really based on the topography of the area, of course, and the more remote access nature of some of these properties. A lot of them are accessible by boat only. And yeah, so overall, just to note as well, our remedial actions on the class 4 system sides of things, we are seeing a similar number of percentage of remedial actions. We're starting to creep up into the high 30s now in terms of the number of properties that are receiving a remedial action letter. However, again, we are seeing, fortunately, that the percentage of systems that receive a remedial action for a tank that is actively failing or a leaching bed that is in a failure state are still in the 1%. They're very low percentages. So I think it's encouraging to see that the results of this reinspection program are continuing to other reinspection programs of the past as well. Sorry, I thought Councillor Barry, I thought I wanted to jump in there. We do have about 10 minutes is my understanding. I think we have another 10 minutes to discuss this report. I'd like to provide this opportunity to answer questions if there are any questions from the councillors or from the mayor or as well Angie as the CAO. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll take it from here. Thank you. We normally have an executive summary, and I understand we can get to that this year. It sort of consolidates it into a little bit of an easier read. I think the thing that I was still, and nothing to do with you guys, but what we found is that there remains illegal discharge surface and gray water systems not present. So those kinds of things remain disappointing, that with all the work that's being done and people know the programs in place, that it's great that we're catching those folks and getting those issues fixed, but just sad that they still exist. I would hope that folks would want to achieve more for the land and place they love so much. But ultimately, it's good that they were captured and will get fixed. Questions? It is a big report, lots of details. I guess the bottom line is that it's still a successful program, that success continues, and looking for questions or comments from council or our guests. Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Thank you. I guess I'm really concerned about the number of properties that need remedial action and what's in place to make sure that those remedial actions are completed. Does that remain our responsibility, or is that part, I should probably know this, but I just want to make sure that we do continue to follow up on those that need remedial action and they don't kind of go by the wayside.
Yeah, that's all handled internally by our staff. And we have had conversations in the past when the program was initially implemented, and the size of the contract was shocking to some people, and they said it was a money grab. And we had to keep pointing out that there's a ton of work afterwards that comes back to keep the program running in-house. So there's no money being made by Algonquin Highlands. But yes, that work continues in-house and is followed up. And we can probably get that from staff at some point, just where we are on those internal stats for follow-up, if council would like that. I saw another hand, Councillor Barry.
Thanks for the report. Where I found some really interesting information, I mean, obviously all of it is super important, had a lot to do with the topographic information and the risk analysis, sort of with the clustering. And I just wondered, with the clustering, how does that, I guess with the topographic information, how does that affect the clustering? So for instance, in areas where there's more gravel or there's more sand, does that elevate the risk? I just wonder if you could maybe speak to that. Just in I know where we live, we're all sand, so we probably have a greater filtration system, where when you're on bedrock, I assume that would be a greater risk.
Certainly. And I even remember conducting your inspection a few years ago, Councillor Barry, as well. So I remember you've got good amount of space there for a dispersal system as well. That's a great question. So one of the differences in the risk factors that would be considered associated with the soil type would be that the leaching bed sizing is estimated for all of the leaching beds that were inspected on that map in Zone C. So when we know the approximate soil type of the area, then we would estimate the soil, then we estimate if the leaching bed is undersized based on the soil type of the area. So we looked at just in trying to get a sense of whether or not the tank itself was undersized and whether or not the bed was undersized. And then if these conditions are met, then the site would receive a risk factor associated with that. And I think that because of the cluster analysis, the density piece ends up being one of the biggest contributors to our representation of risk as well in the way that it's being represented. But we do also see groupings, particularly on kind of the shorelines of certain lakes and how they get kind of tucked in, and you have a few properties all on like one bay or on one peninsula, if you will. And then if we have a contribution of metal tank, as well as undersized bed, as well as some other risk factors and density, that's when we start to see that higher clustering.
If I can add a couple of things on that as well.
Of course, Rob, thank you.
Yes, primarily as far as the density and that clustering goes, it's a natural evolution of the sewage systems. So where you can actually fit a leaching bed is going to be in the areas where there's sufficient sand in order to size that, or gravel. What the concern is from an environmental standpoint is the nutrients and the nutrient loading to the adjacent water courses, the lakes and such. So as far as that goes, there is a clustering. There's just because there's sand, it doesn't mean you're getting excellent filtration and removal of phosphorus as the effluent moves towards a lake. It's somewhat a function of the particular constituents of that sand or of that receiving soil and its ability to attenuate and hold the phosphorus. So in most cases, we're more worried about phosphorus and unionized ammonia than we are nitrates. Nitrates, we concern more about moving that into groundwater, where shallow bedrock and poorly treated effluent becomes a criteria in a fractured bedrock environment. So it's natural in that context to have the groupings in the more development-centric areas with that soil cover.
Mm-hmm. We are seeing more pump tanks and more systems that have filter beds and these smaller beds as well in these more topographically varied areas, just to get our effluent up to a location that's high and dry away from the water. So yeah, over the course of the years, we're seeing more and more pump tanks and more of those smaller filter bed systems too.
Councillor Dayu.
Thank you. First off, the maps are excellent. Thank you so much for preparing those. You know, the report is great and thorough, and there's a lot of information there. And then you see the map and boom, you have this one visual with so much in it. Very helpful. So thank you for those. I have a question about how we as a township can start thinking through our public education on septic health in future years when this partnership with WSP comes to a close. I wonder, in the years now of interacting with the good folk of Algonquin Highlands, if you have in your minds a summary of, you know, the top two messages that you felt that you've had to tell our residents over and over and over again. It seems to be the salient message or the salient mystery or whatever it might be. The one or two things that, or three, that if we could focus on only those things in our public education strategy on septic in the future, those would be the ones that we should pick.
Wow, that's an incredible question. First of all, thank you, Councillor Dayu. We'll relay your compliments to our GIS professional who put together the figures for us. That's an incredible question. I'm really kind of balking at it, to be honest. So there are always going to be some key maintenance pieces that I like to communicate to owners. I think probably one of the prevalent ones that comes to mind is vegetation under leaching bed. Is really, we're seeing a lot, particularly in Zone C, we saw a lot of trees on bed, and they weren't always at the state where it was irreparable. Even my uncle's cottage, I told him 2 years ago, you got to get rid of these trees. So just small saplings on the bed, we're seeing just many more leaching beds that are covered in these small saplings in zone C particularly. And as we get through the program, I would have thought more people were aware that leaching beds should be maintained with short manicured grass. And if you start to allow that brush to grow and grow, the woody vegetation those dense roots can get into the bed, and we don't want that to damage your pipes and then ultimately require a leaching bed replacement in the future, which could be much more expensive than removing the saplings in the first place. So that's a great one that kind of is top of mind for me. Rob, do you have one you want to add as well?
I was going to say, historically, over the years, from a public education perspective, what we generally find, and I've found in my own experience, is there's just a lack of fundamental understanding of how a sewage system works and why it's needed. And I think that's where it starts. If more people, I don't think inherently people are malicious in the fact they don't want to have something that works properly. They just don't understand how it's supposed to work properly. And as far as that goes, sorry, I forgot to put my other phone on mute. That goes into the whole aspect of seeing proximity, looking at how a sewage system interacts with the surface water and groundwater. The first one is the operation, and then where it is in the environment. And then the third one is operation and maintenance. Those are the key ones. If you understand how it works and how it's situated, and then you have to look at how you want to maintain that investment, because a sewage system is an investment, the same as a roof. And it has to be seen that way from a resident's perspective, because usually I see most of the time, pretty much everywhere you go across, not just in the province of Ontario, but across much of Canada and northern US, you run into this situation where it's an afterthought. It's not proactive. And so I think in that particular case, we spoke about this internally within WSP, and moving into next year, what we're looking at doing is offering up some literature and primers to be able to assist with the municipalities to be able to upload information to their website, basically like a homeowner portal, something that you can draw upon, that other municipalities can draw upon as well, to help, just general primers, what it is. Like what we see is a class 1 system. So you have we have an outhouse, but we also have water being pumped in from the lake or a well, and there's no class 2 associated with it. It's, these are these little cause and effect aspects of things. So I think with that information coming out, in addition to good execution on the remedial actions from the municipality's perspective, it helps draw that together as kind of a cohesive way to get the action that you want and to protect the environment overall.
Yeah, those are incredibly valuable tips. So to echo Catherine, really good question, Jen, because we do have, we've got an environmental stewardship committee that is currently not meeting due to COVID restrictions. We have to have a communications coordinator now, and there's the kinds of messages that we can craft to get out to the public. And I know a tremendous number of people, even folks who haven't been very happy with having to have the inspection, a lot of people have found it really interesting. For exactly what Robert was saying, is they didn't really know what happened in there. So that education piece has been partially inherent in the process. And I think there's a lot more we can do. So that's a good question. Are there any other questions of Catherine or Robert from council? Lisa Berry.
I don't know if this is so much for them, but it's just sort of a philosophical question, or I guess more maybe a planning question. When we get these types of maps, how do they layer in deciding lakes that are at capacity? And I just wonder if some of that correlates with already what we've identified, or if there's ever recommendations for going forward on observation.
Well,
can you answer that?
Sorry, I can kind of jump in here, but I mean, the question of capacity of a lake and planning, it's a very important one to consider. And I think it makes me think of when I presented to town council a few years ago, after completing the presentation, and Carol Moffat, Mayor Moffat, had said, we want to be aware of perhaps like risk to algae blooms, right? Because algae blooms on lakes can have an impact on the overall lake health, on the health of anyone that maybe swims in the lake. They have toxic effects, and they also can have an impact on property value, right? So if we're developing safely, if we're developing in a way that protects the environment, and we're maintaining these systems in a way that protects the environment, which I think is one of the most powerful things about a reinspection program like this, is to be able to get knowledge of systems township wide and ensure that if there are systems that have active failure, which would be contributing nutrients much more directly to a surface water body than a system that perhaps needs some updates, needs the effluent filter cleaned, or the trees to be taken off the bed, or these other maintenance pieces to help protect the owner's infrastructure. These ideas are, they're great as well for the environment, but the systems that are actively failing are the ones that are going to have the largest impact nutrient-wise on the surface water body. So if we're able to catch those, as I mentioned, we'll look at our remedial actions and the cause of failure, the cause of remedial action for leaching beds and for tanks. It's really only 1 or 2% of systems that are perhaps contributing nutrients at that rate. So I think that it's helpful, certainly, for us to be able to catch those systems and get ahead of that. But it's a very important question, where do we draw the line, and how dense is too dense, and at what point are we contributing too much nutrients to the surface water body? Because if the question is, what is too much development, and the answer is perhaps when we start to see these impacts related to algae blooms, then getting ahead of it. And that's one of the reasons why WSB has been taking phosphorus samples and starting to try to understand, can we get ahead of algae blooms? Can we help our clients get ahead of algae blooms so that they can protect their lakes for years to come, protect the property values of their citizens, of their ratepayers, and just help people enjoy the beauty of these lakes. The vitality of these townships are often due to the seasonal visitors as well. So I have enjoyed noticing that while there is hesitancy for some citizens to want to participate in the program, of course, because they might not, have chosen to in the first place, even after the inspection, you can, as Mayor Moffat said, people are getting a lot out of it, and I've been thanked on site. I've had people say, "I'm so glad you're doing this program because I know it's going to be good for our lakes," and I think that that's one of the impacts that I'm really proud of for one of these programs. So.
Just to finish that point off, back to Councillor Barry's question about from the planning perspective,
and then you got to go to Andy.
Yeah, the specifically talking about planning. So the MECP issued an inland lakes capacity assessment report, and it gives guidance on how to address lakes where looking at phosphorus loading and nutrient loading to the point where you can reach a capacity. So there's infrastructure there that the municipality can rely upon to help guide that through. And then those maps and those graphics and those aerial clusterings help guide that through in an overall planning strategy. So there has to be an overall planning strategy, and it has to almost be, it's got to be organic in nature, basically from the top down, the bottom up. The top down portion of it looking from a planning perspective, and the bottom up looking at working with residents. It's one of the key things that happened with the Lake Simcoe issues is they passed legislation without engaging in the public in a proactive manner. And that's had ripple effects across the province for years and years and years.
Angie had her hand up, and I have a question that's similar to the cluster question. Angie, go ahead.
I think it's important to keep in mind that the purpose of this program is for prevention. The MOE gives us, based on their testing of phosphorus levels in the lakes, the lists of the capacity at capacity lakes. We take our instruction from them. This program is to help, in my mind, it's to help that list become smaller.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that clarification. My question is around the bright green maps, the physiography maps, In relation to the spillways, so I'm going to stitch together a number of issues that we face. Would it be accurate to say that there are, because of the way the spillways are located around certain lakes, that is there any additional impact or concerns for systems or monitoring in those particular areas? It also, because it also drifts slightly into water levels, fluctuating water levels, which is not your bailiwick, but it's ours. So just wondering what your thoughts are on any additional impacts in the around the lakes where the spillways are noted.
Rob, I'm going to lean on you a little bit here in terms of your experience on the geography side of things, but as well, I just want to mention that when we're looking at the spillways section, we're looking at essentially gravel deposits from glacial activity as well, right?
And so what I'm assuming is, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of asking questions about an area that isn't your expertise, which is the water levels. But if the spillways have a different geology attached to them, it means that's similar to what Councillor Berry was asking about filtration through sandy soils or rock. Then if the spillways are made up of a different sort of glacial geology, that would affect the way they drain into lakes.
In short, you're absolutely right. I'm just trying to pull the figures up here right now, and just to see. But just in general terms, the more permeable the soil is, you run the risk of having less and less physical filtration and biological attenuation of the effluent, which means it's basically allowed to be mobile vertically downwards until it hits a restrictive layer that then has it move laterally somewhere. So if that is gravel over bedrock, it's going to work through the gravel with very little filtration capacity. So realistically speaking, building code says, puts a criteria on for percolation rate or T times of soils that prescribe where we can and can't put them. One of the key things that's overlooked is highly permeable soils, where we have, it's basically the industry jargon called T time of less than 1. You can run into gravel where the T time is less than 1, sands where you have the T time less than 1. And so there's basically the idea there is that there's no attenuative capacity. So if you're into areas where you have highly permeable soils that allow that water to transmit vertically and then horizontally, you can effectively circumvent treatment from the standpoint of what you were hoping to achieve, which means you get short circuiting. So that short circuiting is either directly to the surface water, and that brings in the whole issue about water levels. So water level fluctuations, where it works in a partially flooding or variable elevation, the leaching beds, in a leaching bed scenario where you have a septic tank to leaching bed, those leaching beds need to have a zone of treatment below the receive, like basically below where the pipes and gravel sit. And that zone, depending on the level of treatment needed or the level of effluent quality going into it, it's anywhere between basically 1 and 3 feet. So if you have elevation differences where you have significant inland elevation rises of 2 or 3 feet, you'll end up having a bed that's flooded. That bed isn't going to be operating properly. So you'll run into the situation, if you are getting filtration, that bed is not giving the proper effluent quality vis-a-vis the bacterial action in the bed, because basically there's no oxygen left for that treatment to occur. And you run into situations where those beds also fail just because they go in, or like what we call anaerobic, and the bacteria start to die off.
So is there, in terms of where we know those areas exist, is there anything that we need to do in terms of permit issuance or certain kinds of construction requirements to offset any of those risks?
I think the short answer on that is yes. From the standpoint of building code, already prescribes certain elements to keep that level of development under control. i.e. looking at normal high groundwater levels. The normal high groundwater levels would be a function not just of what they see when they dig a test hole, but looking at those levels as they're prescribed by water levels in the adjacent water bodies. So that is there. That is where on the prescribed for the building permit side, you have to look at that elevation and make everything go up, on top of that point. So it's basically like a 1 in 20 or a 1 in 20-year flood event sort of thing. But in this case, if it's routine, they become there. The other thing is on the soils, looking carefully at the soils that are being brought in for the permit. If even going so far as to look for grain size curves or to have it looked at by a soil professional to know exactly what, how that soil is ultimately going to receive that effluent. And that's a critical aspect of all of this. Going back to the whole, how does it work and how do we keep it working?
And I would say too, if we're seeing permit applications in these physiographic regions where we're aware perhaps that it is a gravel and the tea time could be closer to 1, and if the design has a tea time of 15 or 10, and that's maybe more representative of the region, but on that site it might not be representative, then it could look like taking a more critical eye of the design to try to understand, is this an appropriate leaching bed design for this property and for this site. So I really think it comes down to each individual design and then designer and the burden of care that comes with those the design of those systems. And if we are in, and the mapping is a great guide as well, but it may not be perfectly accurate in terms of we're looking at Oxtown Lake as an area with mapped as spillways, right? So does it make sense for the region around Oxtown Lake to be one that we're looking for a little bit more understanding of the soil type before approving a leaching bed sizing?
I guess ultimately, we could probably talk about this forever, but ultimately, I guess that's my question is, if we know, the building code and staff and bed contractors, they already know all these things. I'm wondering if there's a way, if it's necessary, or if there's a way to marry some of the information out of the report and the maps that we're getting into our existing practices. Because just because the maps are provided for our septic reinspection program doesn't mean that's the only thing we use them for. So I'm just looking for sort of cross-pollination of data into other aspects of the work that we do as a municipality.
Well, the short answer is yes. And I'm glad to hear that, because it's, the reinspection program it's important on its own, but the information that we gather from that, if we can help guide overall planning policies to better, to the betterment of everyone. So yeah, we can certainly look at adding that aspect to it with either separate graphics or separate documents that allow a guidance, basically be a guidance document.
Yeah, I think that's something that's food for thought for not for today, but we are undertaking a lot of discussion and making some big decisions about some very important aspects of the environment in relation to growth and development in the community. And if it makes sense to merge some of the data or have consideration across a number of departments, then I think that would be our due diligence. So if council would like, we can think about that going forward. But for today, does anybody else have any questions of Catherine or Robert on this on the report they provided? No, well, I would thank you both for your time, and I would ask for a mover and seconder to receive the report. Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Dayu.
By Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Dayu, be it resolved, Council receives a presentation from Catherine Sopcich-Riddell and Robert Passmore, WSP, regarding the septic reinspection program for 2021.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And thank you both for your time. Really appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Take care, everyone.
Okay, next up is building and bylaw enforcement business. So we will have one guest leave. There he goes, and we'll bring in David. Morning, David.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. How are you?
I think we're all pretty good if I can answer collectively. We've got a couple of reports for you, one from October, one from November. I guess October is kind of done, but is there anything you want to speak to about that?
Again, through you, Mayor, that was my mistake. I should have had that report to you back in November. Unfortunately, I did miss the timelines to get it to you. Overall, nothing really exciting. Obviously, things are still extremely busy for the department. And as you can see by the tables, like we're so far ahead of permits and revenues from last year. So if there's any questions on the October report, it's certainly more than we'll answer.
Well, I think I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for the October report first. We'll get that out of the way. Councillor Barry and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Shortreed, be it resolved that council receives report PLDG 2021 regarding monthly activities for October, submitted by David Rogers and dated December 9th, 2021.
All in favor? Carried, thank you. And November. So again, your comments, I believe, cover both, that it's still busy, and you know, we spoke during our projects and priorities that permits were at 100% over last year, and I think they're beyond that now.
The one thing I would like to add, if I may, Mayor, I know there was discussion on the remedial action, and I know in both my reports, I do talk about follow-up with WSP. Did council want some clarification on the remedial action that we do with the reports that we get?
Yeah, I mean, Liz asked the question, so if you can speak to it off the top of your head right now, that would be terrific.
Certainly. As you know, WSP goes out and does their inspections, and after their inspections, the municipality receives copies of their reports. This past year, they said there's something like 900 inspections. So obviously all those reports come to us, and through Angie giving me Dawn to use, Dawn tracks all of those reports when they come in. So if there is remedial action that takes place on any of the properties, so if there was 400 of those, Dawn is tracking all of those. From that, the owners do contact the municipality, whether it's, you know, they've got screens missing from their outhouse or there needs pump outs from their tanks. All of those things are tracked. When they come back in, there are times when Greg and I do go out, do site inspections to confirm the work has been done. A lot of the information is coming through from emails where somebody's taken, so if they were required to have a pump out on their tank, they would provide us actually a photocopy of the work that was completed. Once those things are completed, again, Dawn's one that's tracking all this, so I'm grateful she's there. She highlights all of that, and subsequently we send out a letter confirming the work has been done to certify the work's been done. So it's all on there, and it is tracked daily, and it's a lot of work. So it is being followed up on. So there are still some outstanding from back as far as 2018, and we are constantly sending letters out to people. So we do send them out and follow up. So we're not missing any, but just sometimes getting somebody to do the work is being a bit of a challenge. But that's how that process is working.
Thank you for the explanation, Councillor Barry. Has a question.
I'm really grateful for that, and I have no doubt that Dawn is doing an amazing job, all of you, with the work. And that brings a question I have. Is there such a thing as a software system that can sort of be incorporated into this program, where, you know, a little ding comes up that says, just sort of like just on your, you know, on your own computers, where like you need to update your system, that's letting us know and tracking when okay, now it's been 5 years, you're due to have your septic reevaluated, that type of thing. I just wonder if there's, you know, if all of a sudden Dawn was in another role in the township, how does that information get translated, you know, for years and years to come? I just wonder if there's.
It is computerized, but I don't know if there's an alert system. I'm looking at Dawn, she's in the room. There's nothing that goes ding.
You know what I mean?
It's just, like, Dawn said, just her. Dawn goes ding. But yeah, David, I mean, we've invested a lot of money, the Safe Restart money and various COVID funding streams into digitization and technological advancements. So is that something that you're looking at, I guess is the question, David?
Again, through you, Mayor, not that I'm aware of. Currently, we're just using like an Excel spreadsheet. So I'm not sure if that software exists, but we could. Yeah.
So everything exists. It's just a matter of where you get it from and how much it costs.
Yeah.
I think, you know, staff have done a good job of keeping an eye on opportunities to make progressive decisions like that. And if there's some way or means by which we could get away from, you know, the good old Excel spreadsheet into some sort of a different database system, that might be something to consider, just for ease of use and You know, we have a pretty high-end system for booking recreation. You know, and this is equally, if not more important. So anyway, just something to keep in mind for staff, that if something comes along, that we might look at that. If it's easier and more efficient to use. So thanks for the question. Anything else for David on how the follow-up for WSP works? Because that's a little aside there. And if not, I would like mover and seconder to receive his November report for the Building and Bylaw Department. Councillor Barry and Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Barry, seconded by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that Council receives report BLDG 2321 regarding monthly activities for November, submitted by David Rogers and dated December 9th, 2021.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Hopefully everybody has a happy holiday.
And you as well. Thank you. Parks, Rec and Trails business will be up next. And we'll bring in Mr. Card. Morning, Chris.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
First up for you is the land use permit renewal applications. The housekeeping.
Yes, so land use permits allow us to administer our Halliburton Highlands Water Trails program, as well as the ski trails, portions of which lie on Crown land. It is time for renewal for those land use permits. This is to formalize an application, which would then move to an agreement process. And this would be to apply for a 10-year application, and just looking for approval from council to get this application filled out and submitted. Our current LUP expires in March of the upcoming year.
Any questions from council? May I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
Councillor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council receives report BRT 2621 regarding land use permit renewal application submitted by Chris Card dated December 9th, 2021. And further, Council authorized staff to sign and submit the land use permit renewal application to the Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources, and Forestry for the continued operation of the Halliburton Highlands Water Trails and Cross Center Ski Trails.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Plowing of the Big East parking lot.
Yes, so if anyone's not familiar, the Big East parking area is a Halliburton Highlands Water Trails related access point, which is quite popular. It's on Highway 118, halfway between Carnarvon and Bracebridge. It is something that we benefited for a number of years because as part of the operations of the plowing of the highway, the plows turned around there. So at the same time, they were able to plow it, and we benefited from that. That stopped with the renewal of a contract. I had looked at various opportunities over the past couple of years, including adding that to their contract, which isn't of interest to them, as well as looking at possibilities on whether or not we might be able to partner with Minden on it, being in their jurisdiction. But as it is with our own operations, the remote nature of it so far out Highway 118 just makes it not very practical for either organization to be able to attend to. So we did search and go through some quotes for providing services to plow and sand at that location. And Francis Thomas Contracting is able to do so. Last year, they did it on an as-needed basis. This year, we're looking to formalize that process through an agreement. So this would be entering into that agreement for plowing and sanding of that access point for this year.
And Chris, just out of curiosity, you say it's popular. I remember when we, I feel like I'm, the old man on the mountain. I remember when we put winter camping in place as a trial run, as a pilot project. But obviously people still like to go out and do that. Beyond me, but it is, how popular a spot is it? How much winter camping is going on out there?
It is something that continues to grow. It certainly pales in comparison to what you see in the summer. But recently, more and more people have been getting into the activity. There's been a lot of advancements in gear that allow people to do it comfortably. Canvas style tents that are very small, that are able to be packed, that actually have wood stoves in them. So you can go out into the back country and actually live quite comfortably in a nice, warm, cozy tent. They call them hot tents. There's a lot of information online, and a lot more of this stuff being produced. So we're not talking, large numbers, but it is something that is increasing. And actually, of the people that we do get going winter camping, that location is the one that many people want to go to over more places in the Frost Center. So small numbers, but growing.
Interesting. Thoughts, questions from council on this? May I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Barry, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be resolved, the council receives report PRT 2721 regarding an agreement for Biggie's parking lot plowing submitted by Chris Carr dated December 9th, 2021. The council directs a bylaw be brought forward to execute the said agreement.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Public Works business is next, and we will bring in Mr. Bergstrom.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Morning, Lyle. A couple of things for you. First is the ever exciting stockpiling of winter sand.
Yeah, so we went out to get quotes on the seasonal winter sand screening that we do every year. This is for next year's supply. It's not for this winter supply, just so everyone's aware. We earmarked $35,000 in our operating budget for this activity. This year it came in with taxes will be around $46,000. So it is more than expected, but not out of the realm of things right now with COVID and being the end of the season. So looking to proceed with this so we can carry forward.
Any questions or comments from council on this? May I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that council receives report PW 4821 regarding the results of the screening and stockpiling winter sand RFP submitted by Lyle Bergstrom and dated December 9th, 2021. The council awards the RFP to Hawk River Construction Limited for the screening and stockpiling of winter sands in the amount of $45,260, excluding HST.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Next up, sidewalk maintenance. This is not the first time that this issue has been discussed, but walk us through it if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so it's being new to the operations here. We've identified that we actually maintain about 390 meters of sidewalk that's within the jurisdiction of the Township of Lake of Bays. It doesn't appear we have any agreements. This may have been discussed in the past, but there hasn't been much for records that I could get my hands on. There's a few concerns with liability and also with just doing the work. There was a new fence constructed along the side of a sidewalk under Lake of Bays jurisdiction that is making it more difficult for our staff to maintain the sidewalk. But it also creates a bit of liability. So I just want to bring council's attention and see how we want to proceed. If we just continue as status quo, doesn't really protect the Township of Lake of Bays or ourselves from claim. Mind you, I don't know that there's a whole lot of use of the sidewalks in the winter, but what use there is risk. So there's three options. We could look into entering into an agreement with the Township of Lake of Bays to perform the maintenance. Option two, we do not provide maintenance on sidewalks outside of Algonquin Highlands jurisdictions. And option three is continue status quo. although not recommended. I imagine we've been doing these sidewalks for a very long time. I couldn't find a record of when we started, so.
Yeah,
Right.
so Lake of Bays and Algonquin Highlands have had a shared services agreement for many years, and the sidewalks have come up on and off during those discussions, and Lake of Bays doesn't provide maintenance for its sidewalks. I would not want us to be the people that entertain option number 2. Dorset is quite a walkable town, and I believe the sidewalks do need maintaining. It certainly would be. I did reach out to my colleague Mayor Glover just to let him know this was on the agenda. You know, just as a heads up ahead of any conversations that might occur. I think I believe that the best thing to do is to continue to maintain the sidewalks for the village and work with Lake of Bays to somehow be covered, whether we're named on their insured or something as a named insured. I don't know, but we could leave that to staff to sort out. But looking to see what other members of council think. Liability, you know, is creeping up, and we are putting lots of stopgap measures in place where we can to cover off liability where we know it exists. So did we just lose somebody? Oh, she's back. Thoughts from council, Deputy Mayor Liz.
I'm wondering what the extent of our maintenance on the sidewalks are, and like how much that might add up to as far as financial responsibility. Are we just talking about snow plowing?
So, sorry, through the mayor, currently we are just snow plowing and sanding, and then sweeping the sidewalks in the spring. So that's the extent. We're not fixing any concrete bays. We're not doing the annual inspections for trip hazards or anything on the Lake of Bays side. It's purely winter maintenance.
I guess my ultimate goal in the question is to determine if we're the only ones that are doing maintenance on the sidewalks, regardless of the extent of the maintenance, would there be some expectation, or is our liability increased because we're not doing repairs? We're seen as being the people that are maintaining the sidewalks, but we're not actually repairing them. So, you know, if there's some degradation of the sidewalk and somebody trips and falls, it's all on us. I would almost assume, despite the sidewalk being in Lake of Bays.
Ultimately, the sidewalks are under the jurisdiction of the Township of Lake of Bays, the 390 meters. So they would be drawn into any sort of suits that may potentially happen. But we, as the maintainers, will also be drawn into that. So it'd just be nice to have some formal understanding, at least on both parties, whether there's cost sharing or not, just to help with any potential slip and falls. That's the most common litigation that I'm used to. Mind you, where I came from had many more sidewalks, but slip and falls were always the highest liability.
So to Carol's point, then it would seem to me that the most important thing would be to try and negotiate an agreement where they would name us in their insurance.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that would be the starting point. I would really, our working relationship with Lake of Bays has come a long, long way, and I'd hate to see that go by the wayside or run into any stumbling blocks over. I don't want to say over this, because any potential lawsuit is significant for any community. We did ask a number of years ago, I think it was 2013. I'm looking at the CAO about that for $2,500, and at that time it was denied. Personally, I don't want to be the people that get into a bun fight over a couple of grand. We need safety for the community. If we have to do the work, then we find a way to do the work safely for the people in the community. Would be my take on all that. And I would suggest leaving it to Lyle and or Angie to go back to Lake of Bays and just open a conversation and see where we can get on that. Councillor Dayu?
Yeah, it's a new day. That was a long time ago. There are new faces everywhere. Let's have a conversation about it. It would be, reasonable to come up with a good agreement.
And I apologize. I did. I failed to follow up with Mayor Glover before today's meeting. I had intended to do that just as a courtesy, and But we'll leave it to staff to follow up if that's what council would like to do, and I'm not hearing no on that. Great, so the direction then is to open up a conversation or continue conversations with Lake of Bays and see what that might look like for us. May I have a mover and a seconder on moving that forward. Councillor Berry, Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Dayu, be it resolved council receives report PW 4921 regarding sidewalk maintenance. Endorse it, submitted by Ronald Bergstrom and dated December 9th, 2021, and that council directs staff to proceed with option 1.
All in favor? Carried, thank you. The reuse centers, this has been a long time coming, and take it away. Now, is that your report? Sorry, I should look at that, or is it Melissa's?
Melissa will speak to this one.
Okay. Good morning, Melissa.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Reuse centers have been closed for a long time, and gosh, there is a lot of things being landfilled that should find a second life. So you take us through your report if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, so as outlined in the report, they are an important part of our diversion efforts, and there's just some considerations that need to be put on the table as far as the discussion of when and how those centers could reopen. They are considered indoor spaces, unfortunately, so they do fall under all the protocols, the COVID protocols that are required for any indoor space, and so that would probably be the greatest challenge that I see moving forward. And then, as outlined in the report there, just the fact that they have been closed for more than a year now, so all our little critters and that sort of thing have had a chance to make those their lovely homes, and that those need to be cleaned out. They need to be thoroughly sanitized and checked for any damage and that sort of thing. So I'm just looking for direction from council as to how you'd like to proceed with those.
Yeah, thoughts from council. I wasn't sure that at the start of winter was the time to begin the big clean out, but I guess it's where our priorities lie for getting back to that diversion process. I mean, the reuse centers are extremely successful, so that's a good thing. Deputy Mayor Liz.
Yeah, I would like to see us reopen them as soon as we can, but my mind did turn to early spring as opposed to right now. I mean, other members of council may feel differently, but about reopening them, I think it's really important right now because people are hurting. Things are costing more, and it's an opportunity for people to find items or replace items at no cost, and it just helps a lot, and it helps in reducing waste going into the landfill.
I did see Lisa Berry. Saw your hand.
I support them being reopened now. I would think that, yes, ideally they could have maybe been reopened earlier in the fairer weather, but I also think that now that there's maybe less use, maybe there is an easier opportunity to get in there while there's less daily activities happening in there. And like Liz said, I think people are hurting, and people are still throwing things in the landfill because the reuse center isn't open. People are going less places, and unfortunately the dump is not one of them.
No, that's true. Well, and to point to something in Melissa's report is, and Melissa is well aware of this, I have long lamented that we don't or are unable to do more. My dream would be to have our own, maybe not a closed-in building, but you can go to the landfill at any time and there's really good furniture there. And there's nothing wrong with it, but people, they aren't going to search, and they aren't taking clothing to the 4 Cs because they do have to, as Lisa said, they have to go to the landfill anyway. And people either don't know about those places or they don't want to travel there. I saw a Habitat for Humanity restore clothing store in Lindsay the other day. I didn't know that existed. A little bit far to go. But there are these other places. So a couple things that I've sort of not ranted at Melissa about, but wondered the big picture is how do we better inform the public of the opportunities? One of them could be simply signage saying for the things that we don't take in our reuse center. Oh, looking for a place for clothing? Try the 4 Cs in Halliburton. Let's help direct people to the other resources. Because people go to our landfill, maybe they just don't know where else to go. And if it's as simple as signage to say, we don't take these things, but here's 2 places that do, you know, that little incremental education toward diversion of still useful things to other people. So that's something that I'd love to see at the very least is some additional signage that directs people to places in our community that also help the community and keeps things out of our landfill. And I think my big dream of having a furniture diversion station is probably never going to happen. So I'm hearing support for opening them now. And is council interested in some additional signage that helps divert things we don't take to other places in our community that do? I'm seeing 1 nodding head, 2 nodding heads, 3 nodding heads. Councillor Shortreed.
I was just going to say we could also use bang the table for that.
Yes. Yeah, we can. You can introduce them at the same time. Yeah, I see. Lyle, did you have your hand up? Because see, Melissa has her hand up. Yeah, Lyle, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to note that there will be some considerable staff time involved in cleaning up the centers and going through the items that are there. So if we say we're going to open them immediately, it won't be as immediate as one would hope. It'll take say a week or so before we could get to all the locations, get them cleaned out.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't think anyone would think that immediate means tomorrow. It just means that it would get started as soon as possible, and when it's ready, it's ready. But we'll leave that to staff and to set a timetable on that. I think that's understood. Melissa, you were going to say.
I just wanted to mention, if I may, Mayor, the Waste Wizard has quite a bit of information in regards to diversion of materials, about alternative sites that are available, such as Search and the 4 Cs. So that's certainly a great resource that we already have in place to educate folks. Signage is a little trickier because things change quite considerably day to day, almost, it seems. And signage doesn't always get updated, but we certainly can to make some more efforts to increase the sort of educational component there.
Well, you can always make a sign that will stand the test of time by saying, "Not sure what to do with it. Please check the Waste Wizard."
That's awesome. Thank you.
But yeah, I think it's a good idea to get things moving there again. So that's a go. Any further questions, comments, thoughts, input, feedback, Melissa?
I do, Mayor, if I may, just wanted to point out that there will be some challenges as far as maintaining COVID protocols with those spaces due to staffing. And I think it's great to get them open, but it will be at the discretion of, obviously, if there's any challenges that come forward with that. I think we're limited by what protocols and the health unit will allow at this time.
Yeah, a good point, and I think fully understandable. And as I say, I don't think anybody's expecting that they'll be at full operational speed tomorrow. It's a matter of stepping in that direction. And if there are any stumbling blocks or challenges, I'm sure you'll bring them back to us. It's a philosophical decision to let's get back to increased diversion where we can and let it unfold as it will and see how it works. And if it doesn't, you'll let us know, I'm sure. Madam CAO.
Given that this is our last meeting in December, I'm just looking for Melissa's benefit, council's expectation for timing. I know it's at the discretion, but I suspect there will be expectation around timing. So is council expecting that this will be done by Christmas or New Year, or because Melissa will have to prioritize her time, that's all.
It would be, Liz, go ahead. I would think it would start you'd start working on it in the new year, but that's just me. Liz, go ahead.
I was going to say that I don't see it starting and the work starting until the new year, and being done as expeditiously as it can be, but not at the expense of the workload that you've already got. I mean, just work away and get it open as soon as you can, within reason.
Talked about that at projects and priorities, that even with all the challenges that COVID brought to the municipality's operational status, staff have managed to maintain a blistering pace, which we talked about, wondering if that's sustainable. And I think this is just something that gets folded in and gets taken care of as it can be, exactly as Liz has just said. Mary.
I support that as well. My only thought is, I'm pretty sure the space is not heated, and we are in a mild spell. So that's just one factor I thought.
Mild spell, it's -15 today.
It's going to be 9 on the weekend.
Yeah. All right, so we'll leave it. Council would like to see them open. If you guys can fold that in as best you can, notwithstanding any bumps in the road for, being able to uphold protocols and health unit recommendations, and we'll leave it with you. That's the best thing we can do. May I have a mover and a seconder on this report? Deputy Mayor Danielson, Councilor Short.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councilor Short. Be resolved, Council receives Public Works Report PW 5021 regarding reuse centers submitted by Melissa Murray dated December 9th, 2021, and the council directs staff to proceed with the preparations to open the reuse centers.
All in favor? Carried, thank you. Melissa, tell us all about your food cycler project. That's looking good.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, so it's been fabulous to get some feedback from the program, and overall quite a positive result, I guess. I think consensus is definitely helpful to the people who like it, and it's not for absolutely everybody. There's certainly have been the odd person who's just not been the thing for them. But yeah, lots of fabulous response to the survey, lots of great feedback of all kinds, which is incredible to have, considering this was a very sort of hands-off. Everything was done online, no in-person meetings or anything like that, other than distribution of the units. So really, really nice to see the people who participated in the trial were very vested in it and eager and keen to share their experiences with us. So my thanks, to everybody who did participate. They've been wonderful people to work with, and have been really supportive of it.
What are so we have this report, and the people, if there was folks who, as you said, they decided it wasn't for them, then they can do what they want with their food cycler. They can give it away or sell it to a friend, or it doesn't come back to us, does it? No, okay. And then what will you do with the information that you have received, other than, we're going to receive it for information, but what are you going to do with what you've learned through this process?
If I may, Mayor, this is something that, I'm hoping there'll be some discussion with council that, whether, I don't have options to put on the table, because I'm just sort of looking to see if people are interested in pursuing this type of program, to look, if there's funding options, looking just to bring forward something else if council directs, to look at options to, to expand or offer other alternatives. I'm really just sort of putting it out there to sort of see what the feel is, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what I'm looking for is next steps. Is there a round 2, round 3, round 4? Being members of council, of course, we were not eligible for the, we didn't qualify to get involved in the first round, but I had a trial run with one that belonged to the township, and I'd like one. Is council interested in continuing the program to get more people involved in this? Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I think it would be a good thing to be able to continue with the program, but I'm wondering if we ordered in bulk again, would there be the same kind of discount as was provided in the first round? Or would we be looking at full fee?
All this, but I can't remember. Melissa, remind us about that.
Yes, thank you. We would have to go back to Food Cycler and negotiate this. You know, there was no sort of extension opportunity. We would be looking at new. We took advantage of some funding that Food Cycler had. We were very early adopters in the program, so we were afforded some pricing that may not be available any longer. It would be really a matter of having discussion with them and seeing what's available moving forward. And I could see bringing something back to council with that if you would like.
Would council like Melissa to check back with Food Cycler and see if round 2 could occur now? You want to be careful too, because there were 134 residents completed the pre-enrollment survey. There were people who didn't get one, and there were people who don't live here. We're not Algonquin Highlands residents who had inquired. I guess the risk you run is that you bring it back, even if there is the discount, and we end up with Food Cyclers sitting in a warehouse somewhere. I guess that would come forward in a report. Should council wish to continue the program, we can give that direction to Melissa today and leave it with her to make those inquiries. Councillor Dayu?
Yeah, it's hard to know exactly which direction to go in. We've had such wonderful results from this first round, but this first round has encapsulated the folks who are the most interested in this sort of a program at the lowest fee. So now if we go into round 2, how many people would have that amount of interest at potentially an increased fee? And we might be seeing quite a different outcome. I don't know. I think that's worth thinking about more. So whether it's that the township facilitates the purchases or whether the township works really hard on public education to say, hey folks, here's a really, really, really good thing. We've done it locally. It's worked fantastically. Here's where you can get your hands on one. And then see how that rolls out. I'd be curious to hear more from staff, on what the best way forward would be. Yeah.
Well, maybe, again, we seem to be, every meeting, we have 100 things for Chad to do. Bang the Table is going to roll out soon. Maybe that's an inquiry through Bang the Table is what's the threshold for your participation in another Food Cycler program? Is it the fee? Is it the availability? Is it, and then judge from there. At the same time, Melissa could make some inquiries to see if the reduced costs in bulk would still be available and what that might look like, and then stitch those together for a decision sometime in the spring. Maybe do that. Councillor Dayu?
Yeah, that's a great idea. I also remember that when we started the Waste Wizard, we put out a general notice to different lake associations, who then often included it in their in their newsletters or in their annual meetings or whatever it might be. So this might actually be another opportunity, is to take the results of what we've got and then send it out to the lake associations in a simple blurb, now that we have all the details on how to get in touch with them.
So Melissa, can we leave all that with you and Lyle and Angie, and you've kind of heard where council's headed, and again with keeping an eye or knowing everybody's plate is full in the time of year. We can just leave it with you to mull around and bring something back with some ideas around that. Alrighty, great. Then I may have a mover and a seconder to receive Melissa's report on the Food Cycler trial project. Councillor Dayu, Councillor Berry.
Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, council receives public works report PW 5121 regarding the Food Cycler trial project update submitted by Melissa Murray, dated December 9th, 2021 for information.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council.
And finally, for you, Lyle, is your November report. Busy? Anything you want to highlight on there?
Thank you, Mayor. Not much. One item I'll say is that the airport, all our T hangars sound like they're rented now. So we won't be advertising. That's why you haven't seen any advertising. And we also see that it's been a very quiet month in November. Not very much nice flying weather. So it's been pretty quiet there. But anyways, we've been busy all over the township and have been getting a lot of work done.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions of Lyle on this report? Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Just a comment. You picked the one thing that I was going to ask a question about was where we're at with the hangar rentals. So I'm really pleased to hear that.
Councillor Dayu.
And also wanting to certainly pass on good news where it is deserved. The local bus driver pulled me aside one day to say, you know, of all of the plowed and sanded roads in the area that I work on, the ones around here in Algonquin Highlands are certainly the best. We really appreciate the the efforts that go into the plowing and the sanding. So that was great. That was really nice coming from a daily user of those roads with a lot of responsibility on them.
Thank you. I'll pass that on to staff. They do put their whole heart into it.
Terrific. Thank you for sharing that. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive the November Public Works Report? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Shortreed.
By Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortreed, be it resolved that council receives public works reports PW 5221 regarding November monthly activities submitted by Lyle Bergstrom and dated December 9th, 2021.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Lyle. It's just quarter past 10. Shall we take 15 and come back at 10:30? Is that suitable? Great. Thanks. Okay, we're back live, so we will reconvene. And up next is item 13, fire services business. So we'll bring in the fire chief. Good morning, Chief.
Morning, Mayor and Council.
A couple of reports for you. First up is monthly activities for November. Is there anything there that you would like to highlight for us?
Yes, I would like to highlight emergency management. While I was preparing the compliance submission for Emergency Management Ontario, I reviewed the activities of the operations group over the past year. So at this time, I'd like to acknowledge the members of the emergency control group on making some really tough decisions to look up the safety of our staff and our members. And it's a job well done by the committee, and I'm really pleased with what's been accomplished by the group.
Well, thank you for that. That's there was a lot of hard work there, and you're right, some very tough decisions. So I'm sure that folks will appreciate that. Anything else that you want to speak to?
The only other thing is our call volume has increased this year to just under 10%. Majority of them are medicals and low-level responses.
Okay, any questions from council for the fire chief on monthly activities? May I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Lisa, did you have a question, or are you moving? You have a question? You're on mute.
Just a question about an awards ceremony. I know with COVID that has been sort of put on hold, but I just wonder how do we go forward with the recognition program?
Through you, Mayor, what I've preparing, I've got all the years of service medals on order and in their acknowledgement bars. I would feel that if we give it a little bit of time here, we might be able to do a ceremony after the COVID's cleared to allow us to assemble. The other alternative is we could do individual presentations at the halls. And that's something that we should look at the new part of the year, but I have not received all the medals as of this date from the provincial and federal governments.
Okay, that's great, thanks. May I have a mover? Anything else for the fire chief? Back to move from seconder to receive the activity report. Councillor Berry, Councillor Shortreed.
Second by Councillor Shortreed, be resolved, Council acknowledge receipt of fire services report FD 2221 regarding monthly activities submitted by Michael French and dated December 9th, 2021.
All in favor? It's carried, thank you. Next up is the surplusing of the SCBA.
Yes, through you again, Mayor. We did upgrade all our SCBA this year to bring it up to National Fire Protection Association compliancy. As a result, we have surplus SCBA. And in an effort to move our surplus equipment out, I did post the SCBA on govdeals.com, and there was no response from anybody, no bids made. And that's because NFPA compliance goes throughout Canada. So even though they're totally operational, they don't meet compliancy anywhere in Canada. So we reached out to Firefighters Without Borders. They're an association that takes surplus materials from various fire departments and take them to the underdeveloped locations, islands and that, and donate them so they can have some level of fire equipment. So I think it's a really good venture. That's the equipment to continue to be used. It is all operational, and it's a good gesture on behalf of the township.
Yeah, it is, and I believe we've sent bunker gear through Firefighters Without Borders in the past. So definitely a worthwhile cause. Any questions or thoughts from council? Deputy Mayor Liz.
Sorry, not a question, just a comment that I was really pleased to see that that the equipment was going to continue to be able to be used, and in underdeveloped areas is even better. So it was just a nice piece of news.
Great, thank you. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive this report? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Dayu.
By Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Dayu. Be resolved, Council receives fire service report FD 2221 regarding the surplus self-contained breathing apparatus for information submitted by Michael French and dated December 9th, 2021.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. All the best in the upcoming festive season.
Yes, you too. Thank you. Next up is finance business. So we will bring in the treasurer. Good morning, Madam Treasurer.
Good morning, everyone.
First up for you is year-end reserve transfers.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I prepared the annual report for the year-end transfers. And once again, the budget includes departmental transfers for capital expenditures and specific purchases that once the actual costs are finalized, the transfers will be adjusted, especially if the costs come in lower than anticipated. I must apologize. Normally there is a chart with these transfers prepared, but it is still forthcoming. I will have that chart for council in the new year, and it will have the more actual numbers of the dollar figures for the transfers at year end. Notably, again, regular department transfers to reserves have been completed for the year. And then again, as per norm, the operating surpluses within each department will be transferred at year end to help fund future capital projects. So the one direction that I do require from council in particular is as to where we would like to see the revenues from the sale of shoreline road allowances for 2021 applied to. At this point, as of October 31st, there was $212,000 in that account.
Well, there's certainly no end of capital projects to which this could be applied. Ideas, I did ask the CIO the other day, and notably there's the garage at Stanhope. Fire services always need money. It's a substantial amount of money that could put a dent in a number, either one big capital project or a number of smaller ones. What are your thinking? What are your thoughts on that, Jeannie, for where you'd like to see it go?
My suggestion actually would be that this could actually go into that asset management reserve, the reserve that we've established, the life cycle reserve that we established as council with 1% of the levy every year going into this. It could go to that, and then it gets dispersed as required in future years to whichever project once council, has seen the budget and gone forward like from that point.
I mean, keeping in mind that no matter where we put the money, ultimately we can put it anywhere we want if we need it. It's just an earmark. I saw Liz's hand first, and then Jen's.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what your treasurer's requirements are, legislated requirements with what you do with funding. But it was my thought that I'd rather wait until we see where we actually stand at the year end, or where our budget is kind of indicating a stronger need for funds. But that was just me. I was kind of thinking I'd like to wait until we get into our budgeting process. But you may not be able to do that.
No, we can do that.
Jen, what are your thoughts there?
Well, you can make sound arguments for almost any one of our reserves to add to, really. There's no shortage of things that we need to do. They're all worthy. In keeping with the spirit of selling shoreline road, I'm sorry, I've just lost the word.
Shoreline road allowances.
Thank you. In keeping with the spirit of selling shoreline road allowances, one possibility is to put it into the docks and landings reserve, where we have a big need. We've got very little funding currently in there. It keeps with the spirit of having happy, healthy, accessible shorelines. But I'm not sure that's necessarily the best way of crafting an argument, is to go by what is in keeping with the spirit of of where the revenues were generated. So the good thing is these reserves can be changed around whenever we need them to be changed around. So I'd be happy to go with the treasurer's recommendation on that, to be honest. To put it into a general pot and then put it into whichever area we need to put it into as those needs arise.
Thank you for that, Councillor Shortreed.
I'm just thinking of the rec center and the Trillium grant. So I agree with Jeannie, but if we can pull it for that, if we don't get the Trillium grant, because that's going to be a big hit, and people want it open badly.
Well, and we're all saying the same thing, is we have always had more projects and needs than we have money to fund them with. So now it was my understanding that this direction was required by the year end, but if that's not the case, then we could wait till we see the chart and see how it looks, as Liz was mentioning, or ideally in the asset management plan, it can be plucked out to go into different projects. So whatever council would like to do. Jen?
A question for Angie, if I may. I wonder, Angie, do we know when we might hear the results from the Trillium application?
If I may, I don't know that for sure. No, we haven't heard anything, so I don't know that. From previous experience, I believe it's toward the end of the year, but I don't know that.
I'm gonna go to Liz and then back to Jen.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
What Angie said?
No, all I heard was you say back to Jen.
No, I said Liz first and then back.
Oh, okay. I agree with the comments made by Councillor Dayu about the spirit of where the funds come from, and that it should go into that kind of area if it was at all possible. But I think that's probably the nicest approach to take. So, and I also agree with our concerns that Councillor Shortreed has got about the rec center and then a number of people that want to be using that facility, which leads me back to, let's see where we stand at the end of the year and with the budgeting process, and whether that means putting it into, I'm not sure about putting it into asset management as much as a general fund.
Councillor Dayu, back to you.
Yeah, I'm grateful that the Councillor Shortreed reminded us of the Dorset Recreation Centre, because I do think that would be a really interesting and valuable place to put in that funding. So in keeping with what Liz has said, and knowing that we don't yet have the Trillium results, perhaps we could put a pin in the conversation until, hopefully we hear back from Trillium, and then we'll know what the needs are, and then we'll have a bigger picture. But in general, I do support Councillor Shortreed's idea of putting it into the recreation centre.
Yeah, and as we can put it there today, and see the chart that Jeannie provides, and that will give us the better picture of what's up, what's down, and what's where in terms of reserves, and we could make some movements after that if we needed to during budget time. Madam Treasurer.
Thank you. The other option would be simply to pass a motion to allow it to stay within the working funds at this point until the budget decisions and discussions are in place. That way it has a place to live. It is under direction of council. We can move it accordingly to that working funds for now, and then reestablish it, and then it can go wherever based on the budget, and it doesn't get earmarked anywhere specific.
Yeah, that way you're moving it once, not twice.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that suits me. The resolution, resolve to leave it in working funds and pull it out when we see the chart and as part of the budget deliberations. We're still getting to the same place. It's just one less resolution, or maybe two.
Correct.
And so is that okay with council then? We'll just leave it where it is. As Councillor Dayu has said, put a pin in it, but put a pin in working funds. At least then our job is done to have a resolution to put it somewhere, and then we'll look at it again when we see the chart and know where budget's headed. Is that all right? We're still getting the same place. All right, may I have a mover and a seconder to do that? Councillor Shortreed and Councillor Berry.
Shortreed, second by Councillor Berry. Be resolved, council receives report TT 2321 regarding year-end reserve transfers submitted by Jean Hughes and dated December 9th, 2021. And the council concurs with the recommendations regarding the adjustment of the year-end transfers related to projects and purchases. And the council directs the revenues from the sale of shore road allowances remain in the working funds pending 2022 budget deliberations.
All in favor? Carried, thank you. Account summary is next. Are there any questions for the treasurer on that? May I have a mover and seconder to receive that summary? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Berry.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Berry. Be resolved, the council has reviewed the expenditures incurred as set out in the December 9th, 2021 account summary in the total amount of $737,373.57 and hereby approves payment of same.
All in favor? Carried, thank you. A couple of little tax write-offs there. Any questions, comments? May I have a mover and a seconder to receive that report? Councillor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, the council received report TT 2521 regarding tax write-offs submitted by Karen Mintz and dated December 9th, 2021. The council hereby approves the noted tax write-offs in accordance with section 357 of the municipal act in the amount of $336.61.
All in favor? Carried, thank you. Just a verbal report on the things are getting exciting in the photocopier department.
Yes, thank you. We just, the model that we had actually ordered initially is on back order for quite some time. And so Sharp has nicely agreed to offer us a upgraded system at no further cost to the township to put in place. So it's just the formality of the changed agreement to reflect the new model number.
Oh, that's terrific, yeah. I'm sure that nobody has any problem with that, a free upgrade. May I have a moment a second here to receive that? Do we, for a report? Yeah. Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Shortley.
Second by Councillor Shortley, be it resolved that council approves the amended photocopy agreement with Sharp Electronics of Canada Limited and directs a bylaw be brought forward to execute the agreement.
All in favor? Carried, thank you. Fees and charges bylaw, it's in the bylaw. It reflects the discussion council had at the previous meeting. We'll see it in the bylaw section, but it's here. I don't, Jeannie, you're not speaking to it, are you?
No.
Okay, well, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, and Merry Christmas and all the best for the season to all of you.
Thank you as well. Administration business. First up is the Bang the Table logo and registration discussion brought to us by Chad Ingram. We'll bring Chad in. Morning, Chad.
Morning, Mayor and Council. How are you?
I think we're all pretty good.
Good.
You have two things you'd like us to decide on: an option for a little wee logo and a registration. Can you talk to us about those things?
Yeah, that's right. And in the report, I've highlighted there are some benefits to registration, both from a security standpoint and from a data analysis standpoint as well. Not that I'm necessarily recommending that, but I sort of am, I guess, in a way, because there are huge benefits to requiring that.
Yeah, I mean, you may not recommend it, but I certainly would. I think it's somebody can sign up with their, an email address, and they can have a screen name, which is very, very common. We have had some challenges in the past with some inappropriate and untoward behavior, and should that occur online, it would afford the municipality an opportunity to disengage with any folks that behave that way.
That is correct.
And I know, and you certainly, having come from the newspaper world, I do know in conversations with you in the past that managing public comment can sometimes be a challenge when there's a ghost behind a name.
People will hide behind a username sometimes if they have the opportunity, and they will get nasty sometimes when they have that opportunity.
Yeah. So two things. Let's back up just to the. Can you take us through Jen, did you want to comment on the registration part? I was going to go back to the logos, but go ahead.
No, for me, I really like the simplified logo, and I'm very much in support of registration.
So you like option one?
I have to open it. Yes, I like when it's just the AH logo, not with the Let's Connect besides.
And I see Lisa nodding there. What direction would other members of council like to go on the logo? It's small. It's the only, I think Chad will attest to the fact that it's the only place we get to personalize the page, is it not?
So it shows up, it shows up in the top corner of each page and acts as a portal back to the home page. But it shows up small at the top of every page, like almost like a postage stamp. So it's at the top of the home page, and then when you navigate through the site, that logo will always be in the top left, and then you click it to bring you back to the home page.
Oh, well, then option one makes more sense to me now. I had chosen three, and I'm not going to get into a big debate over a logo, but Lisa Berry, what do you say?
Yeah, option one, and I consider myself having fairly decent eyesight. It was the only one I could read without, coming in really close. So
that's actually really good feedback. Are the other members of council prepared to weigh in on the logo, or what say ye? Sometimes these conversations can take on a life of their own. Deputy Liz, which one do you want to do?
A part of me liked the option 3 because I liked including the Let's Connect on it, but it is hard to read. And, you know, on final reflection, I think option 1 is cleaner.
Yeah, it's sorry, through the mayor, we can't control the size of that logo, unfortunately. It just it's predetermined by the site. It is what it is. It's that little kind of square. So option 1, it sounds like.
Yeah, Julie, is that what you're going to say? Yeah. And so I'm generally hearing yes to the registration as well, just for security purposes. And Chad's got some thoughts too about whether he wants to share them now or later, just about data collection, but not in a creepy way, but just to be able to know who we're talking to. And if we know who we're talking to, then through his job, he can modify the messaging based on the audience he knows is there, or the audience that isn't there. Councillor Dayu?
Thank you. Yes, data collection can be a huge asset, I find, as you say, in a non-creepy way. But it is a sensitive thing to know how much to ask and where to draw the line on what we ask. So my question is, should we go ahead and say yes to data to registration? Will we then receive back an itemized list of what will be captured in that registration, or is that for staff to decide? How would that process be taken forward?
So I have a draft registration form. Sorry, through the mayor.
No, go ahead,
I have a draft registration form. So 4 things: you create a username for the site that appears beside any comment you make. A valid email address, which can be anonymous, but a valid email address. The 2 questions I want to ask are age demographic by decade, basically. And then with residency, whether you're year-round, whether you're seasonal, whether you're a non-resident business owner, or whether you're a non-resident who's interested in the township. So those would be the 4 questions on the registration form. And then every single question that is quantitative, so that is where you check off a box, can be analyzed along those lines.
Yeah, I talked very briefly to Chad this morning about this, and said the value in knowing, who it is we're connecting with is if we find that the majority of our responses are from people who aren't Algonquin Highlands taxpayers, then the work is in getting more Algonquin Highlands taxpayers to participate in this robust platform. And so I think there's value in being able to split off some of those things there, and that can change. And if there's any more information from folks we require, those could be standalone surveys. Chad, like anything that we think we want to know about who's out there.
It's a hugely versatile platform, and there's actually a newsletters function within it. So Julia was talking about landfill earlier. I can create newsletters within Bang the Table, and they go out to all the registered people on any given subject.
Chad, will Bang the Table and its capacity replace the news and notices feature we have now, or will it work in conjunction with it?
I would say conjunction at first. I'm still learning the platform to some degree. There are a number of tools though, so we probably could do that eventually. I would suggest.
Like phase out news and notices and just use Bang the Table as news and notices as one piece of the Bang the Table.
Yep, I believe so.
Okay. Anything else you want from us? Just those 2 things which you think you have?
I think we're good to go. That's sufficient direction.
Okay. All right. May I have a mover and seconder to receive this report and direction? Councillor Berry and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that Council receives report C1-421 regarding Bang the Table logo and registration submitted by Chad Ingram dated December 9th, 2021, and the council selects option 1 as the logo and directs that registration be mandatory.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you very much.
Next up from the clerk is the RFP report results for the voting process.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Before Council, the report is outlining an RFP that has been issued for the internet telephone voting services for the 2022 election. As you'll note, we received 5 bids, and the clerks from the surrounding municipalities reviewed them all individually and then met twice as a group to review and score them. We are all recommending to our councils that we select Sidle. They were the best able to demonstrate their experience in Ontario municipal elections. Their proposal demonstrated their online interface is easy to understand with great accessibility features, and as well, they demonstrated security features. So we are recommending that council select Sidle as the provider for this service.
Any questions from council on the process or the company recommended? May I have a mover and a seconder to accept it? Lisa, do you have a question or are you moving? You have a question?
Just a question.
You're on mute now.
Sorry, I don't believe it was in this report, but I did read somewhere else that in the event that someone couldn't use a digital system for the voting, they could access the township office to vote in person. Is that correct?
Yes, we're going to set up a voting station here at the main office as it's accessible in the council chambers. So if anyone is not able to computer and does not have a phone that will allow them to vote, they can attend here to vote and or receive help.
And if someone just wanted to do that, would that be an option as well? Or is it based on technical? Like if someone wanted to vote in person?
Well, you wouldn't know if somebody turned up and said, my internet doesn't work. You can't.
Okay.
Yeah, it's open to anyone that wishes to use it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions from council on this? May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Dayu, Councillor Berry.
By Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, council receives report CO 1721 regarding the 2022 municipal election services RFP results submitted by Don Newhook dated December 9th, 2021. And further, council awards the RFP for the provision of providing telephone and internet services as an alternative voting method for the 2022 municipal election to Sidle Canada in the amount of $275 per elector, excluding HST.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And staying with Dawn, we have some housekeeping amendments in the procedural bylaw, respective of some decisions that council has made.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. These are just some minor housekeeping updates to our procedural bylaw. Under the agendas and supporting materials, we are going to be including the land acknowledgements on our agendas, as well as the addition of the mayor's remarks. And under the delegation section, just to clarify that once we do open up to the public, delegates can appear in person or electronically, and that they are required to provide their own technical devices in order to participate.
Any questions of the clerk on these housekeeping items? Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I do note that a lot of agendas have a notice of motions as one of the last items on the agenda. And we have not done that as a practice. I just kind of wanted to bring that up for thought.
Yeah, we don't have it. It's never been here, but yeah, lots of places do. It's easy enough to add. The clerk is happily nodding over there. So if council wants to add that, that's fine. You'll amend that?
Yes.
May I have a mover and a seconder to receive this report as amended? Councillor Short-Reed, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
By Councillor Short-Reed, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved, council receives report CO 1821. Amendments to procedural bylaws submitted by Don Newhook dated December 9th, 2021, and that in accordance with section 126 of the Township's procedural bylaw, notice is hereby provided that amendments to bylaw 2021-82, being a bylaw to govern the proceedings at council, will be considered by council at a future regular meeting. And the council concurs with the recommended amendments as amended and directs the proposed bylaw be brought forward at its January 20th, 2022 regular council meeting.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Still with Dawn is the proposed meeting schedule for next year to accommodate the work that comes with an election.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. The proposed meeting schedule for 2022 is before council. One request is to reduce council meeting schedule to one from May through to December. This is to accommodate, as the mayor has indicated, the workload associated with the election. There are two other changes that I would like to request. One, the meeting in August moved to the second Thursday of the month in order to accommodate any members of council attending AMO, which is the following week, as well as that we are going to be having a voting station set up here in the council chambers, that we move the October meeting to the second Thursday of the month, as we will set up our voting station during the voting period, starting October 14th through to voting day.
Terrific. And of interest too, with the changes in the election process, is that municipal inaugural meetings are in November, not in December. So that's,
yes, that change came in. Yes,
that's new this time around. Any thoughts from council? Do I dare ask if council wants to just make it a full sweep of one meeting a month for the entire year? One last kick at the can. Come on, you knew I was going to ask. Deputy Mayor Liz.
And you know what I'm going to say. I have a problem with that. I do. And even this I looked at and I thought, oh, but I can see that it's tied directly to election dates and activities associated with that. So, you know, I won't make any arguments about what's being proposed here, but to go beyond it, I would be prepared to put forward more arguments.
So that's why I sort of had tongue in cheek. Yeah, I mean, we've as soon as nominations open, the meeting's always gone to one a month. They were one a month in the year that you ran, and so and the next election. So it's a standard process. So can I have a mover and a seconder for this meeting schedule? Councillor Short-Reed and Councillor Dayu.
Short-Reed, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that council receives report CO 1921 regarding the 2022 council meeting schedule submitted by Don Newhook and dated December 9th, 2021, and the council concur with the recommendations made in the said report and sets the 2022 council meeting dates as follows: January 20th, February 3rd and 17th, March 3rd and 17th, April 7th and 21st, May 19th, June 16th, July 21st, August 11th, second Thursday, September 15th, October 13th, November 15th, which was the inaugural meeting, November 17th, and December 8th.
All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next up is just a congratulatory note for Dawn in completing her executive diploma in municipal management. And you'll recall, again, claps, round of applause. There was a couple of times when the CAO clerked the meeting, and that was because of the number of, I think you said there were 16 modules over 4 months or so.
There was 18 workshops from September till May, and there was some reading materials and pre-recorded. It was all done by Zoom because of COVID. Yeah, it was intensive, but it was excellent.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank the CAO and council for the opportunity to take the course.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Anybody on council would like to say a word to Dawn on that? Or your little round of applause is maybe sufficient. So I think you're seeing congratulations right across council. Okay, so that's just a, our final one under administration is an interesting item that came through, and I believe the CAO is going to speak to this. It's just an opportunity to throw our hat in the ring for a municipal as a provincial location. So Angie, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, I just wanted to bring this to Council's attention. This came through Infrastructure Ontario, and they are looking for expressions of interest for property that may be able to house their laboratory and science complex, they're calling it, that they're wanting to construct. And they're, we immediately thought of our lands at the airport. And so I wanted to bring this to council for thoughts, support on, submitting the expression of interest. There is no application. There's no form to fill out. They just want our information. That's the first step. So just looking for thoughts on that from council.
I'll go to Liz and then Lisa and then Jen.
Actually, I think that this might be an excellent opportunity to utilize some of the land at the airport and help us to move forward with some development there. It might be helpful to have a little bit more information about the type of complex that they're proposing. I mean, it says a laboratory and science complex, but it's not really a detailed description about what they're putting there. But you know, having said that, I still think it's definitely worthwhile following up on.
Thank you. I think it was, who was next? Jen or Lisa? Who did I say? Lisa.
I'm interested in knowing exactly what the scope of the proposal is. When it said laboratory, I sort of wondered, what does that mean in regards to land use? I know we had similar talks when we were talking about our building and zoning with medical facilities, and I just wonder, is that a laboratory have relative impact as far as that goes? And I'm curious to know what compliance monitoring is. That isn't really explained, and I just wanted to know sort of the scope and purpose of the proposed use.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get any more than what's been provided. It's if what they've provided is of interest, you submit your name and they'll let you know. I think that's really as far as it goes. It's a bit of a secret. Jen, and then over to Julie.
Yes, I'm curious about those things too, but no doubt that will be disclosed further on in the process for those parties who are contacted as potential landholders. Yeah, I would say, given the minimal requirements from us at this stage, there's nothing to be lost in just putting together a little list of what they're asking for, sending it off. And if they come back to us, that would be a great time to start asking the more detailed questions. But sure, let's not lose this opportunity to engage. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's a couple of stumbling blocks right off the bat. You know, sewer and water could be an issue. They're looking for ability to accommodate provincially routed aircraft. For what size? Because we are limited in our airport capacity at the moment. So, but we won't know until we move forward with sending the expression. Councillor Shortreed.
I agree. There's hundreds and hundreds of questions, but we can't hurt to ask and find out what they're looking for.
Yeah, fair enough. Then can I have a mover and a seconder to move ahead with the submission, see what we get? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Daniel.
By Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Jansen, be it resolved that Council receives correspondence regarding the art and public invitation to submit an expression of interest for the acquisition lease of land in Ontario. Further, the Council directs staff to submit an expression of interest.
All in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, we are at 11:10, and just a reminder, I have asked staff to wave their hands in the air when we get to 11:30 when we are going to close session. But until then, we will tackle some planning business. So we will bring in the planner and see how far we get. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning.
This is not the first time we've seen this application. It has had lots of questions and concerns attached to it, and it's been across the council table. Just as a reminder, we are not the approval authority. It lives at the county, but this is circulation for our comments. So if you'd like to take us through this version of the application.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, this was last before council in October of 2020, and that was for pre-consultation comments. Since that time, we have now received the formal application. The county has received the formal application and has circulated the township for formal comments on the application now. This application submitted is consistent with the previous proposal considered in October last year. The end result is to sever the lot and create two waterfront parcels that will comply with lot area requirements. These severed lands will meet the minimum lot frontage requirements. A planning application will be required for the retained lands to recognize a reduced lot frontage and to rezone a portion from rural to shoreline residential. too. There's also an existing dwelling on the proposed severed lands. This will need to be recognized through a zoning bylaw amendment as well, as it is located 3.46 meters from the easterly side lot line where 6 meters is required. Staff continue to be supportive of the application given the proposed retained lands will significantly exceed the minimum area requirements. The proposed retained lands are also vacant of a principal use, which means any principal use established on that lot will need to be at least 30 meters from the water. One thing to note, on the sketch provided, there is a gravel driveway identified that leads to a workshop. That driveway currently does continue on to the severed parcel. So I would recommend a minor change to one of the conditions, that being condition number 7, where it says the current driveway on the proposed severed lands be stopped up. I would suggest we change that to the current driveways. So that would include the gravel driveway that leads to the workshop, as well as the driveway that loops around over the severed lands, as that was the driveway that this condition was originally intended to address.
Sean, may I ask, just clarify, do you mean close that driveway, on the drawing, the existing gravel driveway, prevent it from entering on to the proposed severed lot, or are you suggesting it be closed at Boshcon Lake Road?
I would suggest it be closed at where it crosses over onto the severed lot, as that would have a legal right of way to access the severed lot.
Yeah, because the severed lot access is meant to be on 4-wheel drive.
Correct.
Okay. And there needs to be, because the workshop is there's a requirement to build a primary dwelling on the retained portion, and there's a year for that to happen.
That is correct. Should the application be approved at Land Division Committee, the applicant has 1 year to fulfill all of the conditions attached to that in order for the severance to proceed.
Yeah, and I want to just reiterate, I think I said this out loud last time, when this is where I find planning very frustrating, is the concern that lingers is are any further severances that could provide deeded water access from the retained lands to the retained water access. But I know that we can't make that decision on this application based on what may or may not ever happen in the future. But that, I'll just be very frank and say that's a concern, that there's a terrific opportunity to create more lots on Boshcon Lake Road. That is not the application that is before us today. But given the history of the application, that is the concern that I've heard over and over, is the possibility of there being 2 or more lots created off of Boshcon Lake Road that then have deeded access to the waterfront, which would be back lots, I believe, and they're not allowed. So we would counsel, and we just need to just remember that in the future, that should this property owner have any further severances, that would need to be considered at that time, but doesn't form part of today's conversation. But it's just a little, in my world, a little red flag based on the concerns that I've heard. So thoughts from council on this file, Deputy Mayor Liz?
I've had a number of questions that you're aware of that I've talked with Sean about, but something that I didn't raise, and I'm not sure that we can do anything about, is the reduced side yard setback that's required for the existing home on the severed property. Why? I suspect that the reason is that they want to keep as much waterfront frontage on the retained parcel as they can. But, I'm just wondering why, or if we are able to say that we would only accept a severed parcel that meets the side yard setbacks.
So in this case, you are correct. The side lot line setback reduction is required to maintain a straight line so as to not create an irregular shaped lot and to maximize the frontage on both lots. Now, just a point also to note is, for an existing lot, a side yard setback is 3 meters. For any newly created lots, the side yard setback is increased to 6 meters. So a 3 meter setback is not out of the norm for a shoreline residential property. But in this particular case, the exception is required because it would technically be a newly created lot once it is severed.
Does that answer your question and satisfy your question, Liz?
It answers my question, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it is close. It's very close, but it's the way to make it work, I think. Thoughts from other members of council? And I think too, we were looking at an addition of, it's maybe a bit of a motherhood statement, but compliance, assurances of compliance with other codes and requirements.
Yes, we can certainly add that condition and request the county include that. Ultimately, it would be up to the Land Division Committee whether or not they do include that as a condition of the severance, but there's nothing stopping us from requesting that being included.
Yeah, I think that's just one more safety net. And again, our job is to comment as we had last time, and those are our comments. Then we can include those in the comments, and then the Land Division Committee can do what they want with them, what they've heard from us. The clerk has a question.
Can I just get the wording for that? So it's worded properly for the.
I'm not sure exactly what the wording would be. It's something around in compliance with. Sean, do you have that word, that language?
I would suggest a condition be worded that the subject lands being inspected to confirm compliance with the zoning bylaw. Something along those lines.
Is it not zoning, building and other permits though? Or is that inherent? Is that?
Yeah, we could make it that specific.
So zoning, building and other permits.
Thank you.
I saw a hand. Whose was it?
It was mine.
Oh, Liz and then Jen and then Lisa.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that by just saying zoning, that probably wouldn't be sufficient. So I think we've made an addition that will work.
Yeah, and I confess, I think I said this last time too, given all the work we're trying to do for lake health and shorelines and all of that, I struggle with the policy point that's 5.2.6.5 that allows for a lesser shoreline when the land has features that compensate for the deficiencies in the requirements. And I appreciate the intent of that, but I think it can fly in the face of other work we're trying to do in other areas. However, it's a policy that exists, and so we rely on the interpretation of the planner to take us through that. But it's not something that I particularly care for. I think Councillor Dayu and then Councillor Berry. That's where I was going.
Thank you. Yes, just going through the report, I'm seeing that there are, we did make some astute comments in the last round, and a couple of those have been addressed, and a couple of them are outstanding. And I would be confident in punting this back to Land Division and saying, here were our comments, and here are the ones that have been addressed, and here are the ones that remain outstanding, and everything for good reason. Take it away. We're all, in a way, we're all on the same team here. We all want what's best for our county and our township. So I'm happy to go with the recommendation of the staff to support in recognition that some of our concerns have already been addressed.
Thank you. Councillor Berry.
I must say that I did have several concerns, and the further I got into the report and seeing the recommendations, I was pleasantly, I don't want to say surprised. I was happy to see some of the things that were put in it, specifically the site plan development, and I'm happy to hear there's many eyes on this proposal.
Yeah, thank you. And Sean, do you have anything else you want to add or think we need to talk about?
No, I have no further comments on the matter.
Then may I have a mover and a seconder to move this back to Land Division Committee? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danton, second by Councillor Diu, be it resolved that council receives planning report PL 13921 prepared by Sean O'Callaghan and dated December 9th, 2021, regarding proposed severance of lands located on part of Lot 10, Concession 5, Geographic Township of Stanhope, located on Washington Lake, submitted by EcoView Consulting on behalf of Parish, and further that council supports in principle the proposed severance, subject to the following conditions. 1, payment of taxes, including penalty and interest. 2, portions of the proposed retained lands be rezoned from rural RU to shoreline residential 2, SR2, exception, to recognize the deficient lot frontage. 3, the proposed severed lands be rezoned from shoreline residential 2, SR2 to shoreline residential 2, SR2, exception, to recognize a setback from the north interior lot line. 4, a copy of the draft reference plan be submitted to the planner of the Township of Algonquin Highlands for review and comment prior to the registration of the plan. 5, settlement of 5% parkland dedication or cash in lieu in the amount of $1,000 for the severed parcel shall be paid to the Township of Algonquin Highlands pursuant to Section 51(1) of the Planning Act. 6, principal use being established on the retained lands. 7, the current driveways on the proposed severed lands be stopped up along the proposed boundary between the severed and retained lands. 8, an environmental impact assessment being completed by a qualified professional. 9, the registered owners are to submit a site development plan showing the proposed lot prepared by an Ontario land surveyor, OLS, and based upon any recommendations of the environmental impact study, and which will identify the proposed docking envelope, driveway location, proposed septic systems, and all building and structures, main and accessory, within the required setback areas. 10, the registered owners are to enter into a severance agreement pursuant to Section 5126 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, to address any recommendations of the environmental impact study and site development plan. And 11, the subject lands be inspected to confirm zoning, building, and other permit compliance.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. It is just about 25 past 11, and we are scheduled to go into closed session for 11:30. So I think we'll take a break from planning, and we'll go into closed session. Lisa Berry. Oh, you had something you wanted to say.
Sorry, just in what Don just read to us, it states in one place environmental impact assessment and in another place environmental impact study. Do those need to be the same wording?
Don, I think that's for you.
Yes, we can, to remain consistent, it is the same thing essentially, but for consistency, we should have one, and I would suggest environmental impact assessment.
Okay. Sorry.
No, that's good. Now, can we just, is that just a little bit of housekeeping? We don't have to redo that and reread it when we do it. Fine. It's fine. Okay. Okay. Would you like me to move us into closed now and wait, or take a 2-minute break and then procedurally what would you like us to do?
Yes, we can move in now.
We can move in. Okay. Thank you, Sean. We'll call you back when we need you. And I would like to move this under. So Sean's leaving. Could I have a mover and a seconder to go into closed session? Councillor Berry, Councillor Diu.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Diu, be it resolved that council adjourns its open session at 11:28 a.m. in order to proceed into closed session for the purpose of discussing advice subject to solicitor client privilege in accordance with Section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 SO as amended. 2, litigation or potential litigation and advice subject to solicitor client privilege in accordance with Sections 239(2)(e) and 239(2) F of the Municipal Act 2001 SO as amended. 3, personal information about identifiable individual including municipal or local board employees in accordance with Section 239(2)(b) of the Municipal Act SO as amended.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And we're just going to ask, what would you like everyone to do to move into close? Turn your cameras off. Everyone just turn your cameras off. Okay. Thank you. Okay, we are back live, reconvened. May I have a mover and a seconder to resume the open session of council? Councillor Berry, Councillor Shortreed.
Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Shortreed, be it resolved that council adjourns its closed session at 1:54 p.m. and open session resumed.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll pick up where we left off with planning, so we'll bring in Mr. O'Callaghan. Welcome back, Sean.
Thank you.
Next for you is a site plan agreement for Goldby and Kelly on Kawagama.
Yes, this is a vacant piece of property on Kawagama Lake. It's currently zoned shoreline residential 2 with an exception. And the exception places this property under site plan control. So the property owner is looking to develop the lot, and they must now first submit this application for site plan approval to be considered by council. So what they're proposing does comply with the zoning requirements for that shoreline residential 2 exception zone, and staff are recommending approval of the proposed site plan.
And I'm assuming it's under site plan control because of the size of it's pretty narrow waterfront. So it's an existing lot of record, so we just need to manage what goes on it. Is that accurate?
I suspect it was a condition of a severance when the lot was originally created, but likely the reasoning being the frontage of it as well.
Right. Questions or clarifications from council on this? May I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
By Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed, be it resolved the council receives planning report PL 14021 regarding a site plan application by Goldby and Kelly for part of lot 19, concession 11, geographic township of Sherburne, Kawagama Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan and dated December 9th, 2021. And further that council supports the proposed site plan application subject to the following condition. 1, that the applicant enter into a site plan agreement with the Township of Algonquin Highlands and it be registered on title. And that the mayor and council be authorized to sign the site plan agreement on behalf of the Township of Algonquin Highlands.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Next up is an application for Powell and Ammerman on Kawagama.
Yes, this is an application to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. It is a developed piece of property. Nothing of particular note, and would recommend it proceed through the regular process to close the shore road allowance.
Questions from council? May I have a mover and a seconder? So Shortreed, Councillor Dayu.
By Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Dayu, be it resolved that council receives report PL 14121 regarding the proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of lot 20, concession 12, geographic township of Sherburne, Powell and Ammerman, Kawagama Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated December 9th, 2021. And the council approves in principle application OSRA 4221 made to stop up, close, and convey the said shore line road allowance and request the applicants proceed in accordance with the shore road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? That's carried. Another, we've got a lot of them. Application for Sereno and Barrett on Halls Lake.
Another application here to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. Again, nothing of particular note, and would recommend it proceed through the regular process to close the shore road allowance.
Questions, comments from council? May I have a mover and a second? Councillor Dayu and Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved the council receives report PL 14221 regarding the proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of lot 15, concession 8, geographic township Stanhope, Sereno and Barrett, Falls Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated December 9th, 2021, and that council approves in principle application OSRA 4321 made to stop up, close, and convey the said shore line road allowance and request the applicants proceed in accordance with shore road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Shore closing application for Bruno on the river, Hollow River.
Yes, this is a combined application to close the shore road allowance as well as a portion of a road allowance behind this property. This application was originally considered by council back in 2018. However, the file remained inactive for a period exceeding 1 year. So our policy is to consider those approvals essentially void. So they have reapplied to close the shore road allowance and road allowance, and staff would recommend it proceed through the regular process for each.
Questions, Deputy Mayor Danielson?
Just to be clear on the closure of the road allowance, is that the portion that runs from the road to the property? That's just that little section there?
That is correct. There's a small portion behind this property. Behind the road allowance being closed is the actual road allowance that Co-op Road occupies.
Thank you.
Anything else from anybody? May I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Shortreed.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortreed, be it resolved, council receives report PL 14321 regarding the proposed road allowance and shore road allowance closing adjacent to property located at part of Lot 3, Concession 12, Geographic Township of Sherburne, Bruno, Hollow River, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated December 9th, 2021. The council approves in principle application RA 321 made to stop up, close, and convey a portion of the said road allowance and request the applicants to proceed in accordance with the road allowance closing procedure. And the council approves in principle application OSRA 4121 made to stop up, close, and convey the said shoreline road allowance and request the applicants to proceed in accordance with the shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. A bylaw for the name in the name of Ford on Cushong.
This is the bylaw to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. It was circulated for comments from the various agencies as well as neighboring properties, and no objections were received or easements requested. So staff would recommend the bylaw be passed as presented.
Anything from council? May I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Danielson, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Barry, be it resolved that council receives report PL 14421 regarding the proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of Lot 5, Concession 4, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Port Cushong Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated December 9th, 2021. And the council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and concurs with the recommendation made in the said report and directs the bylaw to stop up, close, and obey the said shore road allowance be tabled for further consideration.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Virtue on Maple Lake is next.
This is another bylaw to close the road allowance in front of this property. Again, no objections were received from neighboring property owners or easements requested from the commenting agencies. So staff would recommend the bylaw be passed as presented.
Questions? May I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Dayu, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Barry, be it resolved that council receives report PL 14521 regarding the proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of Lot 26, Concession 5, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Purdue, Maple Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated December 9th, 2021. And the council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and concurs with the recommendation made in the said report and directs a bylaw to stop up, close, convey the said shore road allowance be brought forward for further consideration.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And Can and Purvis on Boschcon Lake.
This is another bylaw to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. Again, no objections received or easements required, and staff would recommend approval of the bylaw as presented.
Question from council. I have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
By Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed, be it resolved the council receives report PL 14621 regarding the proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located.
My God, what is that?
It's a fire alarm, so we will start the meeting.
My dogs are very upset.
Turn your volume down, Lisa.
Does Carol need to? Oh. Did you guys have to go?
Okay, we're back live, and apologies for that interruption. That was the fire alarm system at the township office, all as well. But that sure gets your attention. We will pick up where we left off. We have a mover and seconder for the item in relation to Can and Purvis on Boschcon Lake, and the clerk will read that motion.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that council receives report PL 146-21 regarding the proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of lot 15, concession 2, geographic township of Stanhope, Can and Purvis, Boschcon Lake, submitted by Sean Callahan and dated December 9th, 2021. And the council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and concurs with the recommendation in the said report and directs the bylaw to stop up closing the made the said shore road allowance to be brought forward for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The next, excuse me. Next is Brayak on Lower Fletcher Lake.
This is another bylaw to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. Again, no objections were received from neighboring property owners or easements requested from the various commenting agencies. So staff would recommend the bylaw be passed as presented.
Anything from council? May I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that council receives report PL 147-21 regarding proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of lot 19, concession 7, geographic township of McClintock, Lower Fletcher Lake, submitted by Sean Callahan dated December 9th, 2021. And the council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and concurs with the recommendation made in said report and directs the bylaw to stop up, close, and obey the said shore road allowance be brought forward for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Abbott on Lower Fletcher Lake is next.
This is a bylaw to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. Again, no objections received or easements required. So staff would recommend the bylaw be passed as presented.
Anything from council? I have a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Shortreed.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 148-21 regarding proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of lot 19, concession 7, geographic township of McClintock, Abbott, Lower Fletcher Lake, submitted by Sean Callahan and dated December 9th, 2021. And the council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and concurs with the recommendations made in the said report, directs the bylaw to stop up, close, and obey the said shore road allowance to be brought forward for further consideration.
All in favor? It's carried. Next is Froelich on Lower Fletcher.
This is a bylaw to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. Again, no objections were received or easements requested. On this particular property, there is actually no private property abutting it. It's all crown land, but either way, there was no objections received. So staff would recommend it for the bylaw be passed as presented.
Any questions? Mover and seconder. Councillor Berry, Councillor Dayu.
By Councilor Berry, second by Councilor Diuba, be it resolved, council receives report PL 14921 regarding the proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of lot 18, concession 7, geographic township of McClintock, Lower Fletcher Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated December 9th, 2021. And the council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and concurs with the recommendation made in the said report and directs a bylaw to stop up, close, and pay the said shore road allowance be brought forward for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Throwback on Lower Fletcher, bit of a run on Lower Fletcher.
Yes, yeah, this is another bylaw to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. No objections were received or easements requested, so staff would recommend approval of the bylaw as presented.
Any questions? Mover and a seconder. First, Diu and Barry.
Moved by Councilor Diu, second by Councilor Berry, be it resolved that council receives report PL 15021 regarding the proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of lot 19, concession 7, geographic township of McClintock, Thoroughback Lower Fletcher Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated December 9th, 2021. And the council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and concurs with the recommendation made in the said report and directs a bylaw to stop up, close, and convey the said shore road allowance be brought forward for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Quig on Big Hog Lake.
Another bylaw here to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. No objections were received or easements requested, and staff would recommend approval of the bylaw as presented.
Anything from council? Mover and seconder, please. Councilor Berry, Councilor Shortreed.
Moved by Councilor Berry, second by Councilor Shortreed, be it resolved that council receives report PL 15121 regarding proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of lot 23, concession 14, geographic township of Stanhope, Quake, Big Hawk Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated December 9th, 2021. The council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and concurs with the recommendation made in the said report and directs a bylaw to stop up, close, and convey the said shore road allowance be brought forward for further consideration.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Gattermeyer, Maple Lake.
Another bylaw here to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. No objections were received or easements requested, but staff would recommend approval of the proposed bylaw as presented.
Anything from council? Mover and a seconder, please. Councilor Berry, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councilor Berry, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson, be it resolved, council receives report PL 15221 regarding the proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of lot 15, concession 4, geographic township of Stanhope, Gattermeyer, Maple Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan and dated December 9th, 2021. And the council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and concurs with the recommendation made in the said report and directs a bylaw to stop up, close, and convey the said shore road allowance brought forward for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. McKay on Welch Lake.
Yes, this is the bylaw to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. Again, no objections were received or easements requested, and staff would recommend approval of the bylaw as presented.
Questions? I have a mover and seconder. So Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Councilor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson, be it resolved that council receives report PL 15321 regarding the proposed shore road allowance fronting property located at part of lot 6, concession 8, geographic township of Stanhope, McKay, Welch Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated December 9th, 2021. And the council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and concurs with the recommendation made in the said report, directs a bylaw to stop up, close, and convey the said shore road allowance be brought forward for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And finally, the easy ones, Smith on Halls Lake.
Yes, this is the last bylaw. This is to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. And again, no objections received or easements requested, and staff would recommend approval of the bylaw as presented.
Questions? Mover and a seconder, please. Councilor Berry, Councilor Shortreed.
By Councilor Berry, second by Councilor Shortreed, be it resolved, council receives report PL 15421 regarding the proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of lot 15, concession 7, Geographic Township of Stanhope Smith Falls Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated December 9th, 2021. And the council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and concurs with the recommendation made in the said report and directs a file of stop up, close, and convey the said shore road allowance brought forward for further consideration.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And Warburton and Holly on Halls Lake, a more complicated one. Sean, take us through that, please.
Yes, this application's been before council a couple times. Most recently, when there was an objection received from a neighboring property disputing a 10-foot portion of the shore road allowance to be closed. The applicant has asked if they were to revise their survey to not include that disputed section of land on the shore road allowance, would they be able to proceed with the closure? I've reached out to the objecting party and their representatives a number of times and have not received a response. So I wanted to bring this forward to council to seek further direction on how the applicant should either proceed or if we should hold off until that disputed section of land is resolved.
Councillor Dayu and then Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Thank you. So Sean, just to state in session what you and I chatted about the other day, although you are certainly not speaking for the party who opposed the original application, from your professional estimation, you do not see this new revised proposal as being wildly inconsistent with the complaint that was laid. You think it's fairly consistent?
I believe if the applicants, excuse me, if they were to revise the plan to not include that 10-foot section of land, I'm not sure what sort of valid objection the neighboring party would have.
Okay, thank you.
Liz. You're on mute.
I might have misunderstood Jen's question. But yeah, I was concerned about this. It just seems to me that Mr. Warburton he's just a guy with a lot that wants to develop it and acquire the shore road allowance in order to go ahead. But I was concerned that we might have something in place that would preclude him from not acquiring the entire shore road allowance. Like I know that we've been hesitant in the past to allocate portions of a shore road allowance to individuals.
Sean?
Yes, in practice, we do only sell the entire shore road allowance in front of a property. In this particular case, I think there are some extenuating circumstances where it would be reasonable to consider closing a portion and leaving the disputed section out. But that's what we're seeking direction on from council.
Liz, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just a comment that it would appear from what I could see that Mr. Warburton has done everything that he can do, and it's actually the inaction of the neighbor and or the ability to resolve with the surveyors, the accuracy of a survey. I would assume they'd have to maybe get a third survey in order to. I'm not sure how they would resolve the issue of a survey, but I just think that we should go ahead, given the circumstances, and let him acquire all but that small piece of the shore road allowance.
Councillor Barry.
The adjacent property owner, do they currently not own their shore road allowance either? Is that clear? Is that true?
I believe that is accurate. I don't have that information in front of me though to confirm 100%.
So if we don't make the exception because this is an extraordinary circumstance, we have, as Jen has noted, we have a person who can't undertake legitimate repairs or maintenance on the property. So I don't know why one person should be punished around that. I think we're kind of on the same line there. Lisa.
If the other property owner does not own it and they go to purchase it, will they try and purchase the missing piece?
Sean?
So I've just looked it up, and the opposing party does not own their shore road allowance. So if they were to apply to close their shore road allowance, it would need to be a straight line projection of their lot lines. And now that we know that this 10-foot section of land is disputed, it would not be included in the opposing party's application unless it's come to a resolution between the two adjacent property owners.
So in theory, if it worked out that way, the township could end up retaining possession of a 10-foot wide strip of land in the middle of nowhere.
That's correct.
Jen, you had your hand up. Were you going to add something there?
No, I just wanted to concur. I think this is the right moment to sell the shoreline to the applicant. But I would follow up on your last comment, Madam Mayor. Is there a problem with the township owning a 10-foot strip in between two other properties, or is it just something different?
It's just something different. I think any little, to me, it's like a little hanging thread that can be pulled on in the future. And I do think that we'd be doing the right thing by letting the applicant take care of what he needs to take care of. I would hate to think that if the other landowner wanted to buy their shore road allowance, that I don't know. I'll let the planner make judge that when the time comes, if the time comes. Sean?
Just with respect to that 10-foot section of land, there would be nothing stopping the township from selling that in the future should both parties come to a resolution. So it won't necessarily remain under township jurisdiction for eternity.
Yeah, I mean, is it the case that by failing to participate in this process that the opposing landowner is hoping to addle the plans of the applicant to take care of business on his property, which opposition would be scuppered by us going ahead in this manner, and that could eliminate the entire problem. We don't really know what the problem is, just that it's disputed. Well, we do know, I mean, it's a survey, but anyway, council has clearly said that it's happy to, in these certain circumstances, to move ahead with allowing the purchase, say to accept that 10-foot portion and let the applicant get going on what they need to do. So council's all right with that? Yeah, it is unusual. It's very unusual. May I have a mover and a seconder? Danielson and Councilor Short-Reed.
By Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councilor Short-Reed. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 521 regarding the proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of lot 15, concession 8, geographic township of Stanhope, Warburton, Holly, Falls Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated December 9th, 2021. And the council directs the applicant to proceed with obtaining a revised survey of the shore road allowance, excluding the disputed portion of the shore road allowance, and further that it be brought back to council for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
I'm not sure. Next up is external boards, but I don't think anybody's meeting. So anything from Eorn, Liz?
No, not really. I'll have some news in January, I think.
Okay. I just want to bump back up to the item prior to the library board. As folks know, with the Dorset Depot closed and the Stanhope renovations happening, there's been no library services in Algonquin Highlands for some time now. But I put the new library CEO in touch with Mr. Invest of Robinson's, and there's going to be some lockers for the depot drop to continue in Dorset. So Robinson's has stepped up to participate in allowing those book services to continue. So that's a good news, nice community story there. I think that's probably all from the library. Liz, anything else that you think we should tell folks?
No.
Okay, general business is next. Correspondence. Was anything moved?
Yes, Deputy Mayor Jameson moved the resolution from municipality of East Algonquin regarding habitat.
Do you have a second?
I don't.
Would somebody like to second that? Councilor Barry? Yeah, it's a good point that it's with the assessments being frozen through COVID, and we're losing assessment, and there stands to be a big kick at the other end of that. Deputy Mayor Liz.
Yeah, and what really it's bad enough that it's been going on this length of time, but that it's going to extend us through to 2024 without any increases in assessment. I'm kind of horrified when you consider the value of properties. Right now, we are losing a lot of revenue. But sort of in line with the conversation that we had at the county yesterday, I'm hoping that we do just write our own letter about this, as opposed to copying the world or getting involved with every other municipality who may or may not have written the same letter.
Yeah, we can certainly. I agree completely that this circulate the world, and just you may as well send a letter that says ditto or what they said. And I think we all have the ability to write our own letter. Be similar, but just in reference to certainly the growth we're seeing. All of what's called cottage country is seeing tremendous growth, but there's a ton of revenue being lost there. Councillor Berry.
If we see a correspondence item and have second thoughts past the time, can it be asked to be put on the next agenda?
If it's not too late. Sometimes if things are timely, if it has to go to the next agenda, you could lose the window of opportunity for a piece of legislation being passed or something. But it's certainly is preferred to let the clerk know in advance that you'd like to move something, but that doesn't mean that you can never ever move something in a meeting.
I didn't really
wanted to discuss.
Yeah, the motion coming forward for support for the Georgina. I know I've spoken with Councillor Danielson about this a couple of times, about the shrink wrap and its sort of environmental impact. And at first when I read this, I thought this was just about farm twine. And then in second reading, I realized it's also talking about the plastic wrap that's on boats. And I too have wondered what happens with that at the end of every season. Does it reuse? Is it whatever? And basically this is asking for information on practices and pilot programs against sort of the environmental impact of that.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that that marine wrap is disposed of through an agreement with I'm going to make it up, the Ontario Marina Association. I don't know exactly what they're called. Councillor Shortreed is nodding, but you're right. It has to go somewhere. So is it? I don't know the details of that recycling program. Does it become something else, or does it just go and live in someone's landfill somewhere? And I do not know. You know that, Julia?
No, I just know that they're not allowed to take it to the landfill. It has to be picked up by a certain company. And if you go by the marinas in the spring, you'll see they have it all piled in a pile waiting to be picked up.
Yeah, it's not allowed in ours. I distinctly recall that we made a decision about that.
It is picked up by somebody and goes somewhere, and that's all I can answer.
Like our waste.
Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Well, I'm going to making light of something I shouldn't be, but a lot of people think that boat shrink wrap just goes away, like they're septic. It just goes away. We don't know where it goes, and we're not going to worry about it. But it's got an overall a huge impact when you consider the number of boats that are wrapped in huge hunks of blue plastic. I would really like to see us investigate this a little bit, find out where it does go.
So reading the language, it says that the request is the need to make recycling programs more accessible. So they're asking us to lobby the province to possibly provide direction for us to overturn our own prohibition of blue boat shrink wrap in our own landfills.
Which is not what my expectation of a result would be.
Well, I think this might be careful what you wish for, because if we support this request and the province takes direction or takes action on that and comes back and says, you have to make your landfill accessible to blue shrink wrap. That's not what we want. So we certainly, I don't know if it doesn't look like there's a deadline on this, but we could maybe ask our environmental coordinator, Melissa Murray, to have a look and just bring back more information for you, Councillor Barry, and see if you want to continue to move from there.
Sure.
Because we don't want to support something that's going to overturn a decision we've already made of our own landfills.
I know I read it a couple of times and I just thought, I just going to bring it up, even if it's just a discussion point.
Well, let's find out more. No harm in that, and see what it looks like.
I know Councillor Danielson also just has an issue with just the visual blue plastic in our green environment. So I don't know if that's
over and above the plastic part.
Sorry, that's a zoning bylaw and screening issue, which is not a bad thing to bring up. Okay, may I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the correspondence listing? No, we need a mover and a seconder to move the key stock okay?
Yes, I have a mover and seconder.
Oh, you're going to read it. Okay, that's great. That's where we are.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dennison, seconded by Councillor Barry. Be resolved, Council supports the municipality of Matisse-Valcourt resolution number 21-247, urging the government of Ontario to reconsider its decision to direct MPAC to proceed with a province-wide assessment update in order for Ontario municipalities to be able to collect property taxes based on actual property values. And the Council directs staff to forward a letter supporting this matter.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive the correspondence listing? Councillor Shortry, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
By Councillor Shortry, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dennison. Be it resolved, the Council receives the correspondence listing for the period of November 11th to December 1st, 2021 for information.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. May I have a mover and a seconder for the bylaws? Councillor Shortreed and Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved, the following bylaws be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with a corporate seal affixed. 2021-134 Shore Road Allowance Closure, Lot 26, Concession 5, Geographic Township of Stanley, Maple Lake, Virtue. 2021-135 Shore Road Allowance Closure, Lot 15, Concession 2, Geographic Township of Stanley, Washcombe Lake. 2021-136 Shore Road Allowance Closure, Lot 19, Concession 7, Geographic Township of McClintock, Lower Fletcher Lake, Brayjack. 2021-137 Shore Road Allowance Closure, Lot 19, Concession 7, Geographic Township of McClintock, Lower Fletcher Lake, Abbott. 2021-138 Shore Road Allowance Closure, Lot 18, Concession 7, Geographic Township of McClintock, Lower Fletcher Lake, Frolic. 2021-139 Shore Road Allowance Closure, Lot 19, Concession 7, Geographic Township of McClintock, Lower Fletcher Lake, Thurlback. 2021-140 Shore Road Allowance Closure, Lot 23, Shore Road, Concession 14, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Big Hawk, North Shore, Quake. 2021-141 Shore Road Allowance Closure, Lot 25, Concession 4, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Maple Lake, Gatormeyer. 2021-142 Shore Road Allowance Closure, Lot 6, Concession 8, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Welch Lake, McKay. 2021-143 Shore Road Allowance Closure, Lot 15, Concession 7, part of Lot 15, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Halls Lake, Smith. 2021-144 to authorize site plan control agreement, Concession 11, part of Lot 19, Geographic Township of Sherburne, Colby and Kelly. 2021-145 fees and charges for 2022. 2021-146 to execute an agreement with Sharp Electronics of Canada for office photocopier. And 2021-147 to execute an agreement with Tom's Contracting for the plowing of the east parking.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. May I have a mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Dayu.
Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-148 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its December 9th, 2021 regular meeting be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with corporate seal.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And mover and a seconder for adjournment. Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danson, second by Councillor Dayubi. Resolved, council hereby adjourns its December 9th, 2021 regular council meeting at 2:43 p.m.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We are adjourned. We'll see you for our special meeting on the 14th of December. Thanks, everybody.
And or Friday night.
And or Friday night.
Bye.
See ya.